What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the What is Truth podcast. This is. Someone's got to mute their microphones. I could hear my echo. Um, this is the What is Truth podcast. Oh, I think it was you, Jera. Yeah. And this is Ask Us Anything with the Apollo Detectives. I am joined by Mr. Robert Williams, Mr. Marcus Allen the Great, Dr. Raza, and Mr. Jera White. How are you, gentlemen?
Oh, doing great, Wheezy. How are you?
Doing great. So we do have the StreamYard link posted on my YouTube channel and on the Rumble chat if you look at the pinned comment. And anyone that wants to call in, ask us anything. That's what the name of the show is, Ask Us Anything. Bring us your hardest questions, the ones that you think may stump us. Put them in the live chat, but better yet, hit the StreamYard link. Call in. We'll be mean, or we won't be mean. I'm sorry. We'll be nice to you. We won't bite. We'll have a good time, and it should be a fantastic show. And if you have been following, or you haven't believed the official story in quite some time, you are also invited to call if you got any questions that you want to go over. I thought today would be a great day. It's the day after the 4th of July. A lot of people, especially in America, they have a hard time disbelieving that we never made it to the moon. Part of it is patriotism. It's America, America. It was, for a lot of people, American exceptionalism. Of course we made it to the moon. We're America. That's what a lot of people believe. And so we did celebrate the 4th of July yesterday. And I was like, let's do an Ask Us Anything the day after. I think it's perfect. So, gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
Well, right off the bat, here in Australia, we don't celebrate 4th of July. It's an American tradition, but still makes for a good after party, I guess.
Yeah, same in the UK. We don't have an Independence Day as America does, mainly because it was America that chucked Britain out of the USA, went their own way, which is probably a good thing. You've done very well, but you haven't landed on the moon, guys. So get over it. It's not a problem. They've been trying to go back for more than 50 years. They've been trying to go back. Return to the moon, they say. Well, you could return to the moon with an unmanned craft, certainly. With a robot, you could do that. That's quite easy. Several people have done it. China's done it. India's done it. Israel's done it, or very nearly. They got to within 100 feet and then crashed. So it's not actually that easy to get to the moon, land, walk about, and return to Earth. So if it was so easy 60 years ago, how come nobody's done it since? If you think that you did it 60 years ago, prove it. Give us your evidence that you did it. And don't say the photographs and the films and the astronauts, because we know that they can be, shall we say, manipulated into belief. And the astronauts, don't forget, were all military men who were obeying their commander-in-chief, who said, go to the moon. And they said, yes, sir. How high, sir, when told to jump? So you've got this anomaly between those who believe it happened because they've seen all the films and the pictures and they've read all the books and the magazines, and those who've looked into it, as we have, and found so much that doesn't add up, such as photographic film. This stuff, that's what all the photographs were taken on, photographic film. They weren't digital. And photographic film is affected by the hard vacuum of space. We've proved it. We've done the tests. We've taken a vacuum chamber and demonstrated how photographic film is seriously damaged in a relatively low level of vacuum. If you put photographic film into a high level of vacuum, such as on the lunar surface, it'll basically be destroyed. You won't get good pictures. We know that the color balance of the film is affected. We know that lubrication cannot occur in a vacuum because the lubricants are outgassed. It's one of the effects of a vacuum. So if you're so certain that it happened because of all the pictures you've seen, all the films you've watched, all the books you've read, tell us what it was that convinced you that it happened. We'd like to hear about it. So don't hold back. Don't be rude. Just give us the evidence. That's all we ask for, just the evidence.
There's no bells and whistles there. We're just wanting the evidence. Now, everyone is welcome to start calling in, and we will take the calls in the order received. But before we get there, I did want to play, and if you followed the Apollo Detectives for a long time, you've probably seen this video many, many, many times. However, if you are newer and you are just starting to figure out that it was indeed a hoax, one of the videos that is rather curious is, I'm going to put it on the share screen. It is Nixon making the call to the Apollo, let's see, to the astronauts there. Let's play it. Let's hear it. And then I want to hear some thoughts from the gentleman after we play it in its entirety.
Tranquility Base, this is Houston. Can we get both of you on the camera for a minute, please?
I think we're going to have an announcement here. They wanted both of them in the field of view.
Roger, we'd like to get both of you in the field of view of the camera for a minute.
Yeah, I think something rather important is coming up here.
He's off now. I would like to say a few words to you, over. That would be an honor. Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made from the White House. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you have done. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world, I am sure that they too join with Americans in recognizing what an immense feat this is. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. And as you talk to us from the Sea of Tranquility, it inspires us to redouble our efforts to bring peace and tranquility to Earth. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one. One in their pride in what you have done, and one in our prayers that you will return safely to Earth. And thank you very much, and all of us look forward to seeing you on the Hornet on Thursday.
Splashdown should be on Thursday, 1,250 miles southwest of the Pacific, out to Honolulu, Hawaii, and Pacific.
Roger, I've got a P-22 auto optics pad for you.
All right, so a lot of people will say that's weird. Nixon can make the telephone call to the astronauts in 1969, and today we can't even fly on the planes and keep a steady call, with the satellites as we're traveling across the nation. The official NASA explanation is that the White House was patched over to Houston and then relayed up there. This to me is still ridiculous. And then listening to Nixon there, it seems like it was a completely scripted affair. It didn't even seem like a natural conversation at all. That's just my opinion. But what are your opinions, gentlemen?
Well, you kind of answered what I was to say there about being patched to Houston. A lot of people make a big fuss about that, but I don't think there's anything to be concerned about that. Let's remember that Donald Trump contacted the first two all-female spacewalkers via telephone. He was patched to the Houston Control Center the same way Nixon was, and yeah, I know somebody in the chat as well asking, did he call collect and stuff? Well, no, he just call up Houston and say, hey, I'd like to be patched to the Capcom station. Capcom meaning capsule communicator. Those were they on the missions. They had one guy, or rather one group of astronauts, alternating shifts communicating with the astronauts. They wanted one of their fellow astronauts to be in communication with them the whole time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to check out whether the official time lag between Earth and the moon was maintained during that call. They seem to respond very rapidly. When the astronauts first responded, there was quite a delay. But further on, I think there was much less delay. It's almost as if they forgot they had to have a 2.5 second delay between speaking and responding. Sometimes they miss out the small details, and it's those small details that start to add up and point to the deception. But of course, if the President of the United States is obviously saying man has landed on the moon, most Americans would go along with that. They may not like Nixon, but he was president at the time, and he was obviously communicating with people who were allegedly on the moon. So who are they to question him? Well, it's taken a couple of generations to get to the point where you can question whether the president is correct or not. And Nixon has a bit of a track record for, shall we say, embellishing the truth. Caused his departure from the presidency. Oh dear. Have things got much better? Hard to know.
Yeah. Dr. Raza, you've been a little quiet. What are your thoughts?
Okay. First of all, we have to explain how this thing was arranged. So this Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had pre-recorded this clip, and they had planned it so there would be a phone call with the moon. Them standing there in the studio that looks like the moon was actually recorded in 1968. And they said, at this point, you're going to stand there and pretend to talk to the president. So when Nixon was calling, he was actually just talking to a pre-recorded video that was recorded a year earlier. A lot of the moon landing believers thinks that this is proof that the moon landing was real, because they think that this was a live conversation, that President Nixon was actually live talking to people on the moon, but he was actually just talking. The president was talking live, but he was talking to a pre-recorded clip. So they had planned it out. How long should the astronauts stand there pretending to be listening to Nixon speak, right? And so they were playing back a pre-recorded clip. All right, so it's important to understand how they fake that. All right.
Yeah.
There is one other thing I want to mention about Nixon, if you guys don't mind. If I can share, can I share the screen?
I'm sorry. Just go to present there at the very bottom.
Okay. Share screen. Yep. So let me.
Just a reminder. I wonder if people are still out, doing fireworks and whatnot. People are shy right now. But everyone is welcome to hit that StreamYard up and join us.
Well, Rose was finding that I'd like to mention as well, I was actually reading some of Aldrin's books the other day, and I actually came across a passage in there. He actually tried to blame Nixon for there being no pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon. He said, "Oh, we're about to swap cameras so I could take Neil's picture saluting the flag, but then the president called, we had to stand by for it, and yeah, we kind of forgot it." This was an excuse Aldrin put out there for the lack of pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon.
I always thought that there were no pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon because Buzz Aldrin thought he was going to be first out, so first man on the moon, because he was the lunar module pilot. And in the Gemini craft, the module pilot was always first to leave the craft. So he
He
thought
was the only one to leave the craft on Gemini. The command module pilot would always have to be, the command pilot would have to be constantly manning the controls of the spacecraft while the pilot got out.
Yeah. So if the pilot was going to be first out, Buzz thought he was going to be first out on Apollo. And when he wasn't first out, because of the position of the door and the way it hinged, so he couldn't get past Neil Armstrong, who was in the way, which is why Neil had to get out first. He said, "Well, if you're going to be first out, Neil, I ain't taking your picture."
I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, that's the story of why there is technically one image of Neil Armstrong's back view as he's unloading something from the lunar module. But there's no identifiable picture of Neil Armstrong on the lunar surface, which is a bit strange, given that surely that should have been part of the whole preparation for the landing. But it wasn't.
I remember there was that section in David Percy's documentary where they interviewed J.P. Arnold. He actually recalled that when they wanted to find some good publicity photos, they wanted to find the best pictures of Neil Armstrong, and then it eventually came down to trying to find any pictures of Neil Armstrong, and all they really had to work with was the reflection in Aldrin's visor and the footage from the data acquisition camera. There was no Hasselblad still pictures of him that was really presentable. I think as well there was a section in Bart Sabrell's documentary. He theorized that Armstrong didn't want to be photographed should the whole conspiracy become unraveled. He didn't want his image on the Apollo program for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, that makes more sense because Neil was particularly aware of his own reputation. He was a very good pilot, but he wasn't.
There's a echo. I'm sorry, Mr. Allen. Is that you, Jera?
Sorry.
There's some feedback. No, it was Dr. Raza. All right. Sorry, Mr. Marcus Allen. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that Neil was probably caught up in the whole fraud of it, because don't forget, in fact, you mentioned the filming of that phone call, and it was done in 1968. It was probably done at Cannon Air Force Base, which is where quite a lot of the fraud of Apollo 11 was conducted and watched by the senior personnel at NASA, James Webb being present, Neil Armstrong was present, President Johnson was present. So there were people who were fully aware that there was going to be fraud, but they couldn't admit it. It couldn't be part of the scenario. It had to go ahead, irrespective of how many faults there were, which is why none of the video footage has been retained for Apollo 11, which is a bit sad. That this monumental event, this one of the most important events in human history, has not been retained.
Yeah.
It's odd. Now, the Elk Faza is saying, "I'm sure you can see Armstrong's face through the visor in a couple of long-distance shots. He looks like he's turning his head left." Yeah, you can see Buzz Aldrin turning his head left, but you can't see Neil Armstrong. You can see some of the later missions. You can see allegedly some of the astronauts, primarily Harrison Schmitt, on Apollo 17 who puts his helmet up, which is a very stupid thing to do if you're actually on the moon, but never mind. So there are a great deal of these anomalies surrounding not just Apollo 11, but all the other ones. And if you start adding them up, you start looking at them, it makes a persuasive case for saying that there was some manipulation of the real information that we're told occurred. Let's not even start on Apollo 13, because that could take that rest of the night.
I see Adam Smith has left a comment here. The question I have is, wouldn't the Russian be tracking the craft as it went up, which means they would know if it orbited the Earth instead? Well, here's the thing about the Russians. They actually went on record to say that that they couldn't track the Apollo missions the whole way there and back because they hadn't been supplied with a ballistics data, and so they had to be limited to when it was supposed to be on or near the moon. And the Russians themselves, they had demonstrated a proof of concept as to how to fake a mission to the moon such that radio operators would be fooled. Let me just get the book. I've got it right here. Here we go. The first Soviet cosmonaut team by Bergeson Hall. There's a passage in here from Pavel Popovich, one of the cosmonauts. He says he's talking about the Zonda 5 mission, which was the circumlunar flight around the moon in 1968. He says, when we realized we would never make it to the moon, we decided to engage in a little bit of hooliganism. We asked our engineers to link the on-the-probe receiver to the transmitter with a jumper wire. Moon flight missions were controlled from the command center in the Evpatoria in the Crimea. When the probe was on its path around the moon, I was at the center. So I took the mic and said, the flight is proceeding according to normal. We're approaching the surface. Seconds later, my report, as if from outer space, was received on the Earth, including by the Americans. The US space advisor got a phone call from the US president who asked, why is Popovich reporting from the moon? My joke caused real turmoil. In about a month's time, Frank came to the USSR and I was instructed to meet him at the airport. Hardly had he walked out of his plane when he shook his fist at me and said, hey, you space hooligan. So basically the Russians, they demonstrated how to pull off a hoax such that the people on the receiving end of the signals would be duped by it. Of course, the difference being is that the Russians, they actually came clean. Oh yeah, we're just a little bit of a prank at a little communications test. No, nothing to worry about. Whereas, you know, if the Americans would have wanted to do the same, they just don't reveal how he actually did that.
Yeah. Russians are very good chess players, don't forget. They know how to move 2 to 3 moves ahead of the play. So by demonstrating that they could land on the moon and make everybody believe it, they demonstrated that they could fool America, which they did. It's sad. And the question often asked is, well, if Apollo was faked, why didn't the Russians expose it? And that's a long story in itself. But they didn't expose it because they didn't want America to expose the fakes that they were involved in. The fact that Yuri Gagarin didn't land in his craft as is required by the international bodies monitoring such things. He parachuted out. I wonder if that's something to do with why he subsequently died in a plane crash. Or did he die in a plane crash? Or was he spirited out of the Soviet Union and spent a comfortable life in America away from publicity? Who knows? Who cares?
There's a rumor that he was assassinated because he actually wanted to throw a drink in Brezhnev's face out of retaliation for rushing his friend Vladimir Komarov to space, which obviously he died when his parachutes failed to open.
Yeah.
Tinker terrible. It's amazing, Jerry. I pulled a book out and knew this what to answer. I have I'm a bit of a librarian. I've got stacks and stacks of books about space history and autobiographies of the astronauts. I have little bookmarks everywhere and stuff. I have a photographic memory when it comes to my references.
That's why you're so knowledgeable about the subject, Jara.
Yeah.
And why you can take on astronauts on an even level.
That was a great debate. That's one of my favorite debates of all time right there. Jared did real good there. Dr. Raza, you had something that you wanted to share, and I have it here.
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple of questions which are tied together. And of course, this also has to do with the Russian question. But let me just start here with the Nixon, because that's where we started. So some of the moon landing believers will say that, okay, we know that LBJ was a Freemason, but Nixon wasn't. So Nixon couldn't have been on the hoax. But this is the thing, Nixon was secretly a Freemason. So they were working together, even though one was Republican, one was Democrat. They were both Freemasons. Now, LBJ was a publicly admitted Freemason. You know, he admitted to the whole world, yes, I'm a Freemason. But Nixon was secretly a Freemason. So it took me a lot of research to dig this up. But I'm showing you an article. This is from a Freemasonic webpage. I'm just going to read the top line there in the red. It says, the Knights Templar room is medieval French Gothic and was dedicated in 1957 by the then Vice President Richard Nixon. So you can see on the right is the George Washington Masonic Memorial of Alexandria, Virginia. It's a very large, it's one of the largest Freemasonic buildings in the world. And in 1957, President Nixon was the vice president at the time. And he went to this Freemasonic hall to help dedicate the Knights Templar room. Okay, so why would Nixon be dedicating a Freemasonic temple if he wasn't a Freemason himself? So this is proof that Nixon was secretly a Freemason. And the same thing goes for the Russians. You know, the Russians were also, people were asking questions, oh, why would the Russians track the craft, blah, blah, blah. The Russians knew that it was a hoax, and it was the same thing. Who pulled off the hoax? It was a mixture of Freemasons and ex-Nazis. You know, if you study the Operation Paperclip, so many Nazis were brought to America, but also Nazis were brought to the Soviet Union. So the whole moon landing, the whole space race, you know, between the Americans and the Russians was just a scripted show between Freemasons and ex-Nazis, and they all knew that it was hoax, and the Russians weren't gonna blow the whistle on the moon landings.
If I may add my 2 cents worth regarding this whole Nixon versus Johnson thing. In fact, we've talked about the debate I had with the astronaut, and Mullane, he actually brought up the fact that the Apollo program started under the Democrats and was continued under the Republicans, under Nixon. He asked why, well, you know, considering the way that the Republicans and the Democrats are at each other's throats, why didn't Nixon blow the whistle on Johnson and Kennedy and so on? Well, first of all, the only faked Apollo mission under Johnson was Apollo 8, which happened right at the end of his presidency. But aside from that, a lot of people, I think a lot of people seem to fail to realize now is that the Republicans and the Democrats of the 1960s was not what we have today. Today, it's all a bunch of Donald Trump sycophants desperate to try and make their opponents look worse than Trump, you know. And whereas back in the 60s, their ideals may have differed, but not their common goals. You know, they all had very obvious common goals in the appearance of technical superiority to the Soviets was an issue to Eisenhower as much as it was to Kennedy, as much as it was to Johnson, and of course to Nixon. So, you know, they had to put out this impression of being technologically superior to the Russians, and if that meant just by deception, then so be it. Now, another thing is we should also remember as well is that there were government deceptions that continue to presidencies, including between Democrats to Republicans. The one that stands out in my mind, of course, would be MK Ultra. That started under Eisenhower. That was that secret CIA operation to perform experiments on patrons in nightclubs and brothels and the like, injecting them with LSD and all kinds of drugs to see throwing everything they could at these poor people to try and see what they can do to pull off this mind conditioning drug. And that started under Eisenhower. Right? Kennedy could have easily outed Eisenhower. Instead, it continued under him, right? Because they needed some mind controlling abilities, to mind control their enemies. Right? It continued under Kennedy. It continued under Johnson. Right? What did Nixon do when he inherited this stuff? Did he stop it? In fact, he had an easy out. His three of his predecessors died during his election. Two of his predecessors died during his presidency, and of course Kennedy was assassinated. So he could easily have turned around and said, "Oh, it was the other three, not me. I had no idea what was going on. It really was the other three." Did he do that? No. He simply continued the MK Ultra program under his own presidency. So it clearly demonstrates that the Republicans and the Democrats of the 1960s were willing to pull off such atrocities. It wasn't really a night and day difference between the two people. They both were capable of these sorts of things, and if it shared their common interests, then they would inherit it and escalate it.
Now, so I started reading Mr. Marcus Allen's book, The Apollo Moon Hoax, that I personally received and autographed by the legend himself. And towards the beginning of the book is a quote from the late, great David McGowan that is super powerful. I completely understand why you guys added that to the book. And I want to read it. So this is from the late, great David McGowan. What primarily motivates them is fear. But it is not the lie itself that scares people. It is what the lie says about the world around us and how it really functions. For if NASA was able to pull off such an outrageous hoax before the entire world and then keep that lie in place for 4 decades, what does that say about the control of the information we receive? What does that say about the media and the scientific community and the educational community and all the other institutions we depend on to tell us the truth? What does that say about the very nature of the world we live in? That is what scares the hell out of people and prevents them from even considering the possibility that they could have been so thoroughly duped. It's not being lied to about the moon landings that people have a problem with. It is the realization that comes with that revelation. If they could lie about that, they could lie about anything. Peace. That is from the late, great David McGowan, from Wagging the Moondoggy, one of the greatest books written on the Apollo moon hoax written. But I mean, that sums up a lot for what we're talking about today in why we do these shows, because I'm sure there's probably people, why do you care? That happened 60 years ago. Think about it. These are things that we get taught as kids growing up as fact. This is fact. This is fact. Man landed on the moon in 1969. This is fact. It gets passed down as historical fact. So that ultimate question on what I just read is, if they lied about that, what else are they lying about? And so you have to question it all.
How long have you got, Wheezy?
I've got all night.
But
it's that's the thing. When you question things, I started reading a Carl Sagan book. It's heavily, deep into the scientific theory and whatnot. Now, after 2020, I have several rebuttals to some of the things he has written in that book. However, when we talk about science is all about questioning. If you have a strong foundation, if you feel so sure in what you are talking about, what you believe in, you should be able to take any any criticism. People should be able to throw anything they want, and if you truly are on a firm foundation, it will hold up to whatever scrutiny. And I think that's the issue lately with a lot of folks, is that when you start questioning things, people want to shut you up. People want to censor you. And in my opinion, maybe you folks may disagree, but in my opinion, that is anti-science. I think when people are transparent, people that makes people feel more comfortable. But when you aren't allowed to question things, that's when more questions pop up. And I don't know. We're living in troubling times right now. Is what I'm worried about. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that the late great Richard Feynman said it very well. He said, "I like questions that cannot be answered, rather than answers that cannot be questioned."
Mm.
And that is what science is about. Science is about asking questions. There is no such thing as settled science. There may be things one can prove beyond much doubt, and that's fine. And there are laws of science, there are laws of physics. But the whole point of science is it should be questioned. And anybody making, as you said, anybody who makes a statement should welcome questions to demonstrate whether their statement about whatever it is they're discussing stands up to questions. Like, we are quite willing to have questions asked of us because we're questioning science, the science of spaceflight. So let's get real about it. And let's stop refusing to listen to people who disagree with us. I want to listen to people who disagree with us because I could be proved wrong. I don't mind being proved wrong, because that will enhance our understanding of what we know about it. But just being called rude names, being called, as Corky Cat just says, Graham Hancock was ridiculed by the mainstream for his views on ancient history until they discovered Göbekli Tepe. Now who's been listened to? Yeah, people question things, and that's what you should do. The whole point of science is to question it. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Speaking of... Oh, sorry.
I just going to respond. I just wanted to respond to one of the questions in the chat, but go ahead, Raza.
Yeah, I also wanted to respond to one of the questions. Somebody earlier asked, why would they fake a disaster on Apollo 13, right? So that's so easy to answer. It's like, okay, if there would have been no accidents, then the whole story would have been so unbelievable. So they had to throw in one accident there to make it the whole thing believable. Oh, look how dangerous it was. They almost died on Apollo 13. Yeah, of course they're going to fake one of the accidents.
I have my own 2 cents worth about that as well, as a matter of fact. Everybody says that was to draw public attention back into the moon race because they stopped tuning in come Apollo 12. They're more interested in I Love Lucy. They were complaining about that. But I have a different theory. You know, the with Apollo 12, if you recall, they didn't have any camera work because they pointed the camera at the sun, destroyed the videocon tube, and so there was no video for the moonwalk, right? And of course, on Apollo 13, they had to shut down the camera, to reserve power, as they said, right? Well, here's my comments to that, right? If they were often asked, well, why would you fake it 9 times? Why would you just call it quits after Apollo 11? Well, that's not how science progresses. You know that when you would expect okay, we've done this amazing achievement. Now let's see how we can build on that. There were plans for moon bases. There were plans for visits to Mars, flybys of Venus. All these elaborate ideas using Apollo technology. I might add. You might recall the Apollo Applications Project. Those are all fantastic ideas, but they weren't what Kennedy had set the country out to do. He says, land a man on the moon and get him back to the Earth. Okay, supposedly we've done it with Apollo 11. Now we need to get out of this, focus back on real space flight, so we don't have to, further risk ourselves getting exposed. Okay, and so what do? They fake a near disaster on Apollo 13. Okay, and that contributes to the cancellation of the Apollo program. Apollo 20 had already been cancelled because they needed its rocket to launch Skylab, and after Apollo 13, the last two missions, Apollos 18 and 19, they also got cancelled. In fact, there was even considerations to cancel Apollos 16 and 17 as well. Obviously, that didn't turn out that way, but ultimately, I believe Apollo 13 was their excuse to basically end the Apollo program and get out of the fakery and focus on real stuff again. Now, the other question I wanted to respond to here is by Adam Smith. He says, is a bit of a clarification, he writes, actually. He says, the question I have is, wouldn't the Russians be tracking the craft as it went up, which means they would know if it orbited the Earth? Well, first of all, Earth orbit is your first stop, supposedly on the way to the moon. All the Apollo missions, they had to enter Earth orbit first before the translunar injection burn. And as for the Russians themselves tracking it all the way up, remember, it depends what you mean by tracking. If you're talking about the radio signals and stuff, remember the Russians are on the other side of the world and stuff. You have to be in line of sight to receive the signals, right? If you're not in line of position at the actual launch site, the best you can do is just track it when it flies over your head, right? Whereas if you're actually physically there, you can track it with a camera if that's what you're talking about, and you can follow it that way. And as I said before, right, once you're in Earth orbit, you can just keep your signals transmitting towards the craft on its way to the moon, this unmanned craft to the moon, and that in turn will relay the signals. In fact, the Americans actually had a way of avoiding being eavesdropped on by the Russians or any other enemy nation. They would transmit in the oxygen absorption band, which would actually prevent the signals penetrating the atmosphere and being received by an enemy nation on the ground. So that would be pretty convenient. Transmit on that oxygen absorption band to the spacecraft that's the unmanned spacecraft that's going out to the moon, and have that spacecraft transmit on the signal that you expect the Apollo spacecraft to be transmitting on.
Yeah.
And I think a more interesting question is regarding the Chinese tracking the crafts. With the Russians, they knew that it was a hoax, but the Chinese were not. So the thing is that with the Chinese, they could not track the crafts because NASA had jamming technologies to stop the Chinese from seeing what was going on. The Russians, they didn't need to try to jam them because the Russians knew that it was a hoax. There was one craft where the Russians tried to jam the American tracking, but that was just like another puppet show going on. They knew that they wouldn't actually be able to jam them because they were using technology which the Americans had given them.
Yeah. And also the fact that talking of listening in to the Apollo craft, as we're told radio ham operators did, most of the transmissions from the Apollo craft, wherever it was coming from, were transmitted at the gigahertz level, a very high frequency. Ham radio operators couldn't pick that transmission up. They could only pick up voice transmission that was at a lower level, a lower frequency, which is why they could only hear one side of the conversation, we're told. But the idea that ham radio operators were listening in, and by the way, has anybody ever heard any of the recordings these alleged ham radio operators made of their of the Apollo craft. We're told they listened in, and we hear various accounts of what they heard, but there's no recording that I've ever heard or heard about that they actually did listen in to anything realistic. The only people listening in, sorry?
I was just going to say, I actually wanted just to make a slight amount of correction on that. I actually have heard one recording. There was the fellow Larry Basinger, I think his name was, who was said to have received signals from Apollo 11. I think they published a little soundbite of that on his website or in a news article somewhere. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But again, it all boils back down to that Zond 5 incident where the Russians sent the probe around the moon and everybody thought it was manned.
Yeah.
So it's often brought up, and I actually did a follow-up video regarding the few hams who claim to have received signals. Right? They all say, "Oh, we can only do it when they're on or near the moon. We didn't have the tracking, same as the Russians. We didn't have the tracking data to follow it the way there and back, and had to wait till they're in orbit around the moon or on the moon or whatever." And in fact, I think the FCC actually policed what signals they could release. They were the signals that weren't intended for public distribution. They had to. The FCCs were told, do not publish those or you'll be going to jail. I did a whole video about that. You can look up. It's Moonfaker Apollo ham sandwich. Called it ham sandwich. There's a bit of wordplay there.
Yeah, there's videos you've made and posted several years ago, Jarrow. Very, very informative. You obviously know your stuff about this, and you prove it. You demonstrate the knowledge, which is great. And how many people are aware of the Tetra A satellite, the testing and training satellite?
What is that, Mr. Allen?
It's the Tetra A. It's called Tetra A, testing and training.
Yeah.
And it was launched in December 1967 in order that signals could be transmitted to it and received from it, so that the Houston teams allegedly tracking the craft could practice. And as a commentator has already said, Gene Kranz, the mission commander or mission controller for Apollo 11 and all odd-numbered Apollo missions, said they couldn't tell the difference between a simulation or the real mission once the rocket went into space.
I've got the acronym right here. It's Test and Training Satellite. That's what the Tetra. The TE is the test, and the TR is the training.
That's right.
That's what the acronym means.
Yeah, and it was always said that satellite was decommissioned early 1969. Well, NASA stands for never a straight answer. So can we be certain that happened? I don't think so.
Now, I wanted to, I guess, get some thoughts on the whole, the Voyager. Apparently was launched way back when, 50 years ago. And it was to travel, just keep going and going. Apparently it's traveling at a speed of 36,000 miles, allegedly. That's what we're told. And I read an article, I think it was this morning or yesterday, where the Voyager, Jared, I think I'm hearing my echo again. Yeah,
sorry,
you're good. So the Voyager is supposed to allegedly around November, it will be the distance equivalent to 24 hours the speed of light. That is what the article wrote. So basically, we all know here on Earth, light is instant. But apparently the Voyager will be 24 hours at the speed of light, so 1 day's worth of speed of light travel. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's pretty damn far out. Now, I've always had questions, and I know Scott's not here. I know Randy Walsh is not here, and they probably would have agreed with me. So you folks may disagree with me, but I find I personally find it hard to believe the whole Voyager story. I mean, this thing has been out there damn near 50 years and running on the same batteries, allegedly, still out there traveling and going out there. I personally don't buy it. And I know.
Let me offer some. I was just going to offer some corrections that you in regards to your question. First of all, Voyager doesn't use batteries; it uses a radioisotope. You know, it basically a miniature nuclear power station. You know, I think it was running on plutonium. I forget the isotope exactly, but basically the idea is this takes a long time to decay, and it powers off that decay of the isotope. And so, however long that that isotope is going to last for, that will power the spacecraft. And what they mean by it being 24 hours light speed, basically, if you can understand, right, we see the universe, we see everything because of light. Okay, the light that you're seeing from your computer screen literally just took a few nanoseconds to get to your eyes from the computer screen. And so you're actually seeing us how we appeared a few nanoseconds. If you're watching this live, you're seeing us how we appeared a few nanoseconds ago. Okay, when you look to the moon, you're seeing it as it appeared about 2 seconds ago. Okay, and so similarly, when you're looking at the sun, you're seeing the sun as it appeared 8 minutes ago. And so now, obviously, radio signals, they travel at the speed of light. And so what the deal is that this Voyager has traveled so far away in space that the light is now taking, so the radio transmissions are taking an entire day to travel from where it is beyond the heliopause to the planet Earth to be received by the radio telescopes.
I get you. I just don't buy it. I understand
Well,
it. I just don't buy it.
There has been some independent proof of the Voyagers. We mentioned ham radio operators. They're often cited for the Apollo missions, but as I say, you can pull that off with a unmanned probe to the moon, as they proved on Zon 5. But what about the interplanetary probes, right? If you're going to go through all the trouble of sending a probe all the way out to the edge of space just to transmit signals, why not fit an actual camera on the things? You can actually take pictures of the planets, which is what they did on Voyager, and so we have, I think his name was Louis Cupido, I think his name was. He published a website where he has his various readouts from all the various space probes and satellites he's tracked, and Voyager was among them. So I think that puts Voyager's story checks out, I think.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree. And that's what this is all about. Yeah, I don't buy it at all. I know you talked about the isotopes, but why not just tell people that's what's going on? Yeah, it's interesting. Now, Tinker did have a funny little comment here. Still can't figure out how those guys and all that spacesuit gear fit in and got out of the lander without one tear. Space origami? So that is, I mean, the official NASA explanation. A lot of people will say we'll see the astronaut on the rover, doing the little dune buggy stuff, and based on the video we see, you're like, how the hell did they fit that rover in that lander? And you had 3 astronauts on top of that fit in that little lunar lander. It doesn't make any sense. The official explanation is that the lunar lander could fold up and they stowed it at the very bottom. It still doesn't make sense. But this is even a better question. How the hell in that crammed little area were they able to put on all their gears and not have a single tear? And that's another observation when you look at some of these astronauts on these alleged photos. They don't look like the Michelin tire man. Like they should, with all the pressurized suits, they should have been fully pressured. And they're able to move around, play golf and all this crap. Doesn't make any damn sense. Any thoughts, Raza? You've been a little quiet, so I want to get you in.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think, correct you on a couple points. So the official story is that they put on their suits in the command module, and then 2 men went into the lunar lander, right? So there would just be 2 men in the lunar lander. And anyway, this is just the official story, I did want to come back to the frequency thing. So I was trying to share a screen here.
Oh, I've got it here. 1 second. Here you go.
Right. So the command module was supposedly transmitting at 2272.5 megahertz, while the SIVB was transmitting at 2277.5 megahertz. So this is also slightly a correction to something Marcus said earlier. So it would have been possible for a ham radio operator to build a receiver to operate at this megahertz frequency. However, the thing is this is what they were being told. They were being told that the command module was transmitting at 2272.5 megahertz. And that is just NASA's saying so. You don't know. And I actually got into a debate with somebody who was working in the command center. And he keeps telling me, no, it can't have been a hoax, because I was part of the team which built the tracking and the frequencies. And so he said, I was sitting there watching the frequencies and I could see them going around the moon, blah, blah, blah. And I said, how can you know that they didn't pull the switcheroo on you? How do you know that it wasn't the SIVB, which was transmitting at 2272? That's how they did it. They just switched these two. So everybody was following the SIVB because they thought that was the one transmitting at 2272. But actually, they had switched it. So even the people in mission control couldn't know the difference between the command module and the SIVB. They wouldn't have known that it was the command module in low Earth orbit, and it was actually the SIVB that was orbiting the moon.
So your argument is that the S4B was used as the unmanned probe to relay signals. Is that your argument?
Right. So what I'm saying is the SIVB went to orbit the moon, and that was the one which was transmitting at 2272. And that's what the one everybody was watching. The ham radio operators, even the people in mission control who were not in on the hoax, they thought that they were doing a real thing. And they thought that the command module was transmitting 2272. But they weren't. They just switched it around. So they just sent the SIVB and they told everybody, oh, don't watch the SIVB. That's transmitting at 2277. But they just switched it around. They had this unmanned craft, and everybody kept their eyes on the unmanned craft, thinking that it was a manned craft.
Let me play some devil's advocate here. Wouldn't it have made more sense to maybe have the S4B deploy, if it's going to go out to the moon, wouldn't it have made more sense to deploy an unmanned craft, in place of the, like maybe make some space underneath the LEM or something like that, and basically have it deploy an unmanned probe if you're going to be sending the S4B stage out like that? I mean, I think they supposedly had to watch for the S4B, make sure it didn't impact the landing site, see where it's heading out on its way out to the moon. I think there was supposed to be two separate craft that were supposed to be tracking the manned stack and the spent rocket stage. That's what I've read in the books and all that, though.
Yeah, that's part of the official story, is what happened to the SIVB. And so some of the missions, they supposedly crashed it into the moon, and some of the other missions, the SIVB got lost somewhere out in space. But this is all just taking NASA's word for it, the fox which guards the hen house. And actually that is a subject which I'm going to look into in the future. Is we know that the LRO images of the landing sites have been photoshopped, But now I'm starting to wonder is have the LRO images, you know, if you don't know LRO, that's a lunar reconnaissance orbiter that's photographing the landing site. So it's also possible that some of the SIVB landing sites have also been photoshopped. So I'm going to look into that.
I'm glad you
well.
brought that. I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Raza, because a couple of weeks back, and Robert, if you're there and listening, there were a couple of images shared by the Indian. I can't remember what it was. Indian craft that. What's that?
Chandrayaan 2.
Yeah, Chandrayaan 2 that allegedly took images of the landing spots and blah blah blah. I then showed the link over to Robert, and within a matter of a minute or two, Robert returned my message saying, "Look, I whipped this up in in 45 seconds." I think he said, and that's the thing. We have to take their word that these things are authentic, whether it's the Voyager or any of these other things.
Precisely.
And I don't trust any of it. I don't. And so, Robert, you sent me a quick mock-up of the images and how you were able to duplicate exactly what the Indian Chandrayaan allegedly took.
Yeah, I showed that in the editor. I showed that in a few videos to show how they did it. It's very simple. You take any of the liftoffs. There's a DAC camera in the window. And you take any of the liftoffs and you grab the site where they tilt over and they have a image of the landing site. And all the tracks are there. Everything's there. So, of course, they're going to match. So you take an image of that, you blow it up, fuzz it out, and then remove the color, and guess what? You have an LRO image. And it doesn't matter. You could do them on all of them, right? And of course, the tracks are going to match. I also put that up against the Apollo 15 takeoff, and then I put them up against the other LRO images that they had. They match perfectly.
You know what, Robert? I pulled up that clip that you made for me and whipped it up. So here is Robert showing you how easy it is to fake these images.
For anyone interested in how an LRO image could be created, here's a prime example. It's that simple.
Look at that.
I'd like to point out I made made my own lunar landing with the LRO photographs. When they first released the original images, I downloaded the image and I basically a few dots of pixels here and in Microsoft Paint, I might add, and I was able to make my own lunar lander. But anyways, get to this picture here. This is the stuff that was released by the Chandrayaan 2 spacecraft. Now, if you look at the image on the left there, that's the Apollo 11 site, and you can see that the spacecraft better resembles a Surveyor spacecraft. It looks more like it has 3 legs. The Apollo 12 image, it's better matches the Apollo lunar module, right? And so when I looked at those, they were finally released. I actually sent a link to my article about this on Ollis. It's in the chat, in the private chat. I managed to get the original the raw images, and I've been actually kind of distressed by the images that have been circling around in the media and the actual raw images, because it appears that the raw images of the Apollo 11 site has been brightened and pixelated and altered 6 ways different ways to Sunday, and basically make it as far from the original representation as humanly possible. Okay, yeah, so here's the article. If you scroll down a little bit. So for the longest time, they were just released in this webinar thing, this little live stream that they were doing, and we had to wait for them to release the raw pictures. But when they released the raw pictures, right, okay, this is what they released in the newspapers. Okay, as you can see, it's been brightened, it's been altered, it's been all kinds of things done to it. But if you actually scroll further down, you can actually see the raw images. Okay, that's the comparison with what they had in their live stream and what was released in the newspapers. Okay, but we go further down. I managed to get the raw images. Okay, here's the raw image of the Apollo 11 site. Okay, it's much darker. It's sort of skewed a little bit, but other than that, I had to brighten the image just a little bit just to make it match what it appeared in the live stream. If you scroll further down, okay, no more further down. Okay, now that's good. That's just up a bit, just to show that both of them. Yeah, just show both craft in the shot. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah. So the image on the top there, that's the raw image, and the image on the bottom is what they showed in their live stream. Now it was necessary to, as I said, it was necessary to brighten the image a little bit just to bring up the details as well as it was in the live feed, and we can see that even in the raw image, it resembles a three-legged craft. Now, I went through the trouble of trying to get it to match how it appeared in the newspapers. It was actually first appeared. There was no official announcement. It was unveiled in a French magazine, French stream magazine. I'm probably going to butcher this pronunciation. Physicality, whatever you pronounce it as. And as I said, it looked very, very bright and changed and whatnot. So if you actually scroll down, you find all the different steps that needed to be done in order to get them to match. Here I'm just overlaying it with the thing. Further down. Yes, here we go. Here's all the different steps I had to do to try and you can just scroll through each of these and just see how it is. You see, like I had to brighten it, I had to pixelate, I had to do all sorts of things, and it was just insane. All these different changes that were necessary to make it resemble what was shown in the magazine. Somebody's obviously gone through a significant lot of trouble to get these images as far from the raw representation as possible. As you can see, I think the pictures speak for themselves there.
See, to me, as a lay person, as a garbage man, I'm looking at these pictures and it looks like straight up Photoshop. None of this looks real to me.
Well, the raw image, if you go back to the raw image, you can see that it looks like in fact, I actually have an overlay of the Surveyor spacecraft. Surveyor was the unmanned precursors to Apollo. They had 3 legs, and they basically landed there to test the stability. They had 5 out of 7 missions, and 5 out of 7 missions were successful. Further up.
So, are you saying you believe these images to be real?
I believe the Apollo 11 image to show a 3-legged craft. There's another thing people have pointed out is that there's no footprints or anything visible in the Apollo 11 image, which makes you wonder. Okay, and so I believe
I wonder if any of it is real. If you
zoom in on that image below
this one right here.
Yeah, there we go. That one there. You see, I've overlaid. What I've done here is I've taken an overlay image of the Surveyor spacecraft and overlaid it over the top of the image. Okay, and so with the case of the Apollo 11 image, I believe what's happened is that the Indians, they have photographed this Surveyor spacecraft on the surface of the moon in Apollo 11's place. I believe this is the craft that was used to land on the moon and relay signals, to the relay videos and whatnot to the Mission Control Center. That's what was broadcasting the signals. Okay, and presumably would have had a little ascent stage to beam the signals back up, as it's doing the return phase of the mission, and presumably there would be a mothership as well. But the point of them, they'd had something similar on the Chang'e sample return missions, for example, just for comparison's sake. So what I believe here is I believe that this Indian spacecraft has photographed a Surveyor spacecraft on the moon, okay, in Apollo 11's place, and for whatever reason they got sloppy. They released it naked and unvarnished, essentially, basically as is. Now, with the Apollo 12 image, that's a bit of a different kettle of fish as well, because it displays many of the same anomalies as the LRO pictures, like the flag supposedly casting a shadow. And as I said, the LEM in the Apollo 12 image better resembles the 4-legged LEM. And some people have theorized if they landed a LEM truck, which was the unmanned variant, which never got flown, of the Apollo lunar module, that would put the ISRO pictures in the clear as far as the as the Apollo 12 image is concerned, assuming if it deployed a rover or this and that. But still, there is all those anomalies with the flags casting a shadow. I've asked ESA, like, how are these images processed? In fact, when they released the LRO pictures in the beginning, I was actually at the press conference, and I asked them, how were these pictures received? Who received them? Okay, and they told me it was received by White Sands, their tracking station. Then it was passed to Arizona. Sorry, it was passed to Goddard Space Flight Center, then passed to Arizona State University. Okay, and so who made the camera? Okay, and so this elaborate pass-to-pass with the images that gave the opportunity for somebody to, photo manipulate the images before they were released. Okay, so I asked the same questions to the various people at ISRO, and they never told me nothing. For the longest time, I suspected, okay, maybe ISRO received the Apollo 11 image, whereas NASA received the Apollo 12 image, and they did this and that to it. I recently learned that that ISRO received both images, and so, well, what happened to this picture between its reception and when it was released is up in the air. I've been trying to find out who did you send this to anyone. I know they had to be processed to work in NASA's image viewer program. I forget what it's called right now, but yeah. So I want trying to find out what has happened to these pictures. You've been sitting on this for quite some time. You've been very slow at releasing these pictures. I mean, what have you been doing?
Fake.
What have you been sitting on?
Because it's all fake, man. That's why, Mr. Marcus Allen, what are your thoughts? Are you buying these images? I don't buy it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I don't buy it either. I think what Jarrah has done, the analysis he's created, and what we were just looking at there, which is on the owlist.com website, is worth checking out. If you don't agree with Jarrah's conclusions that it was basically faked for the reasons that we've been discussing all night, they had to make us believe that the Apollo craft was real. Unfortunately, they got it wrong. Presumably, the guys who were doing the additional editing to it were too young to remember that the Apollo lunar landers had 4 legs and the Surveyor craft had 3 legs. So if they used a Surveyor craft as an Apollo craft, it was obvious to anybody who understood it, they got something wrong. And I think Jarrah has been very, very comprehensive in his analysis of it. It's necessary to have this. People don't agree with that. Let's see your reasoning behind it. There are plenty of people who say, oh, you're talking nonsense. Oh, this is just rubbish. I noticed there's one particular commentator on the live chat who's continually saying that we're all wrong, we're all faked. Well, prove it, guys. Don't just say it. Anybody can say it's faked. But Jarrah has proved that particular analysis was for real. If you don't agree with it, show he's wrong.
Yes, well, Marcus, I'd like to add something. Yeah, we have this Dark Fen on the channel, and he is our very good friend. That's rhetorical. The NASA-loving psychopath.
Hello,
yes, and he's in here, and he's saying all these things and how everybody's wrong. And I asked him, I says, okay, let's be fair about it. If you want to be real men about this, then come on up. Just use your voice. Just come on up and let's discuss it. Never mind putting trash talk into the chat. Why don't you come up here? You have a chance right now to talk to us. We're not going to bite. Just come up and talk to us. It's very simple. The link's in the chat and my channel as well. So come on up or get lost. Politely.
Yeah, so Dark Finn, I think the reason he doesn't want to call in, it's probably because he sounds like a geek. Let's read one of his comments. This is probably how he sounds like in real life. And I mean, obviously, if he sounds like that, I can see why he doesn't want to hit the StreamYard link. But so let's read his comment. This is Dark Finn.
Even the Chinese show dark areas of disturbed regolith of each of the Apollo sites. What are the chances? My name is Dark Finn. I'm too chicken shit to call.
There we go, Dark Finn. That's why he doesn't want to call in. He probably sounds that geeky. So I'll kind of.
Well, I'll tell
Give
you
him a little bit
something here,
slack.
Wheezy. One thing that gets me is that these guys, they'll come up here and they'll make all these comments. The guy lived on our channel. I mean, this guy was
Yeah.
posting 24/7, and he was blaming Stray Dog for taking all the comments out. It was Scott and I that were taking them out because enough was enough. You don't sit in someone's channel and keep going and going and going 24/7. And you could answer him. You could reply to this guy. You know, it didn't matter what time of day it was. You get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, just check. Oh, yeah, there he is again. It never stopped. So he had to go. It was just ridiculous because those type of people harm the channel.
Look at all the laughing. People are laughing at what Darkfin sounds like. Here he is.
Wrong as usual, guys. You guys are being mean to me. Oh, yeah.
You know, he actually just made
Jara, now isn't that interesting how you found? I just want to bring this up because we have to talk about this. Phase 52012. I don't know how many times I have to tell him about film packets. How do you put these packets together? You if it's 24.
We've got a caller, Robert. We've got a caller.
Oh,
I don't know who this is.
Okay.
Hold on to your seats. Mr. God-loving anarchist. Welcome to the stream.
How are you?
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. What is your question, sir?
What's your standing on the entities who are ruling the world behind the scenes?
Well, I tell you what, I can take that one. I believe that there are forces out there that do control this planet. I mean, let's face it, we can't be the only single ones out there. You know, here, there has to be somebody else out there. But I still believe that it's dark forces that are controlling this place. I mean, let's just take a look at, for example, what's happening in the States. I mean, what that president's getting away with is absolutely ridiculous. And that's the first time in history. So personally, yes, I believe that there is something behind him protecting that guy for sure. And it's the same thing with the rest of the world. But that's my own personal belief.
All right. Do you think that behind him are people who are called, I don't know if you can use this name over here, let's say people in small huts? I'm not talking about the converts to their religion, but I'm talking about the old bloodlines. The bloodlines from the time Christ was on earth.
Well, Mr. God-loving anarchist, that's a great question, but unfortunately, we're on YouTube and we can't go too deep on YouTube. So that's really the only thing. So I apologize for that. Is there any other NASA-related questions you got? Moon landing?
All right. How many numbers, how many listed numbers you can say which are related to number 666? And all the... I see people are smiling, so you know what I'm talking about.
Dr. Raza might know a thing or two. he was smiling. You wanted to hit that, Dr. Raza?
Yeah, I think that there's we have ever since 1913, America has the Federal Reserve Bank, right? And this is a global. It's part of a global network. Yes, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements.
Yes,
all the private central banks of the world are connected through the BIS. And so, if you ask me, there's been one whistleblower who was a former Illuminati that used to work for the BIS, and it is too big to take it down, so yeah, it is a very powerful thing. And I don't know, maybe someday it will be taken down, but it's not going to be easy. For myself personally, I just want to say one thing. In America, basically, you have what I call the Christian Zionists and the Freemason Zionists. right? And so they're both Zionists. So
yes,
this is where the problem comes. They can't admit. They have to see. That's why I'm not afraid to say these things. You know, I'm not afraid to talk about Freemasons, the private central banks, and these things. This is the kind of stuff that needs to be said. You know, and until they come out and say that, you know, right, like now, you know, Trump and all them are talking about, you know, this and that, but until they come out and say that they're against the Freemasons, it's all just a blah blah blah, because all these vague terms, you know, the deep state, blah blah blah. This is just vague. These people, you have to come out and say it. These people are Freemasons, you know, and if
yes.
you're going to be a Christian, you have to take your stance against them.
I think we have to address the thing and go deeper than that, because now we call them Freemason, Masons, Deep State, Jesuits, and the Men in Hats, and so on.
It's a bunch of secret societies, though, man. It's
if you really
not just one thing. The only thing is, my man, I just out of respect for my buddies with the Apollo Detectives YouTube channel, they got a pretty good channel. I know what you're talking about, and I talk about that on my channel all the time. But there's things you can and can't say on YouTube. Unfortunately, I don't like that. That's not my rules. It's just the YouTube rules, man. And I just
will try to navigate around it.
But yeah, next time, whenever I do a live stream, you're more than welcome to voice. You know, I don't do shows very much or very frequently on YouTube because of that.
Right.
I don't like to.
I want to say something. I know people are aware of it, but if we go to the words of Christ, he said, "You builders, you didn't put me as your cornerstone." So why he said specifically builders and not people from Mesopotamia, Delta Nile, Greece, Rome, or whatever, or Babylon? He said specifically, "You builders," because builders are Masons. So now he said, "You builders, you didn't put me as your cornerstone." And as probably you know, cornerstone is always on the north of the building. So their north is not Christ. So now, if you go to the animatronic building, not in all of them, but in some of them, you will find some kind of compass, some kind of map. It will be on the ceiling, on the floor, on the wall, or on the flag. If you put next to it compass, you will find that their north is not really north, because their north is Lucifer.
Copy that. And you are entitled to that opinion. I want to address this real quick. So much for free speech. Dude, there is no free speech on YouTube, bro. So don't take it out on us. Take it out on the platform. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, by the way, Wheezy, what's your channel? Old mate here wanted to know what your channel name is.
Just right there. So the platforms, if you notice on the graph that we're on, you won't see any YouTube symbols because I'm hardly ever on YouTube. Find me on Odyssey, Rumble, Spotify for the video shows. And if you want audio only, you can find me on your favorite podcast player. And yeah, I mean, it's tricky right now. I think that NASA loving psychopath at one point said that the channel's dying. My rebuttal to that is, no, it's not dying. There's censorship that we have to navigate. And also, I think a lot of people are waking up to these shenanigans that we made it to the moon. More and more people are doubting it. You know, you see SpaceX to this day in 2025, with all the technological advances that we have made, and we still can't get a damn rocket off of the moon, off of the ground. But we made it in the 1960s. It's a bunch of hogwash, in my opinion. And so I think a lot of people are starting to understand that. It's not, I think now when you question, at least for me anyways, it feels like when you tell people you don't believe we made it to the moon, I think a lot of people are receptive to it. And I think even 10 years ago, if you said that, you were looked at as crazy. How could you not believe we made it to the moon? And I feel I feel it's changing.
It's not about believing, it's knowing. Because even now, so-called science, which I call scientism, confirms that they cannot pass radiation of Van Allen belt. So it's all BS. And probably, as you know, NASA in Hebrew, in direct translation, means to deceive, deception. And who is master of deception? Satan.
I have to correct you on that, because if you actually read the Hebrew, it actually translates to lift, which is ironical, really. But I know there are some variants of the thing that say to deceive, but NASA in Hebrew actually means to lift.
There are few translations. There are few words, because Hebrew doesn't have a lot of words. So, but in this case, you are correct. But as well, it means to lie, to deceive. So if you look into the etymology, you will find that that's what I said is correct as well. And you are correct too.
Okay. Robert, you were saying about phase?
Oh, yeah, phase. Interesting how you dug up a little picture out of his video. And apparently, if we put that up, I don't know if you have it, Jared. Do you still have that? Because he's claiming to have worked on all of these movies. Now, he's worked on movies going back to 1952 to 1956, which would make him probably about Marcus's age then, somewhere in there. And he has quite a lot of film credits that he has put out there. Now, the funny thing is that so do I. But the difference is that, you see, he's trying to find out who I am. And of course, we're trying to find out who he is, which probably is never going to happen. But the funny thing is that he decided he's going to post this. Now, I'm thinking, for a fellow who works in film, you obviously have a problem trying to understand what variable frame rates are and constant frame rates are. Now, a constant frame rate is an image. For example, you take a film that has 24 frames in it. Now, what happens is you count those 24 frames on a moving image, you're going to get a different image for each individual frame. 24 of those makes up the image, makes up the moving picture. So now if you go to a constant frame, a variable frame rate, you're going to have dupes in there. You're going to have duplicate frames in there. So I went through that image, that video that FaZe put up. And guess what? You know how many dupes we found in some of those? I've counted three dupes and two, maybe one, three. Now, Marcus and I went through that together. And it's interesting that, yes, when you have those frames change to 60 frames per second, you're still going to have 60 images in there. Now, here's the other thing. When you change it from 60 to 24, you're going to have an awful lot of duplicates in there.
Hold that thought, Robert. Hold that thought. I just shared the link to the video in the chat with the time code. Wheezy, could you put it up, please?
Oh, perfect. Anyways, he should know about those things when you're counting the frames. And when we put the three videos up together to compare it, they all have the different times at the cut from the 8 frames to 24 frames. Something's wrong there. And those videos are all started at the exact same time. So he can't argue about that. So anyways, yeah, you want to take this away, Jared?
Yeah, I was looking at this. He or she FaZe is their gender is ambiguous, but they put up this video, which honestly I don't know what the point of his video was, because they didn't really have anything to add to the discussion. But at this point in the video, they claimed that they had worked on all these different films. Destination Moon alone, for example, that came out in 1950. You got all these different films, and we're trying to find out, well, obviously if they published this, then it should be pretty straightforward to find somebody whose name's in the credits in each one of these films. Interestingly, the only credits for people that we could find working on these films were people who are now long since passed on. So yeah. So
I bet you Dark Phase is non-binary. He sounds non-binary. Yeah, I mean, if these movies are 50 years old, he'd have to be 100 years old talking smack on YouTube comments. I don't buy it.
Well, Marcus isn't that old, but he could be. Unfortunately, just like Jarrah said, though, seriously, yes, they have all passed away because we've looked.
He's
And Marcus is still alive, and he's not as old.
I was just going to add as well, ironically, that same video, he actually, if you put it back on towards the end, he discusses he was responding to our video we just put out on the radiation hazard, and at the very end, he brings up the Stanford Torus ring, which was a proposal to have a station at the L5 Lagrange point. No, just a bit further back, you can see what I'm talking about here. And he actually mentions that this particular station would have used mined moon rock as a radiation shield, several meters thick, to protect the occupants on the ring station against the radiation. Let me find the time code for it where he talks about that. Okay, about here we go, about 8:45. 8:45. He talks about, here we go.
Is he talking?
Yes, he's talking.
Okay.
No, he just has little.
No.
He doesn't have any voice. It's just text.
He'll never use his own voice. He'll never use his own voice
because he sounds like a geek, and we uncovered him. All right,
he or she,
or he, she, non-binary. All right.
Yeah.
Here's non-binary.
So the point is basically. Yeah. So the point is basically there was a proposal back, I think it was in the 70s. Yeah, the 70s. It's on the screen to basically build this gigantic. Just pause the video. It's just music. It's just text. It's not important. It's just that screenshot. There we go. Yeah. So basically, he goes here. The exterior of the space station habitats would have been covered with lunar regolith, and basically, what this was about was they had this. You might remember the Arthur C. Clarke or 2000. Basically, the ring stations that they would have where they would orbit around the place. Basically, what they were proposing, they had this enormous station large enough to house entire civilizations inside the ring station. Okay, and they would basically use moon dust, again on the outer walls of the station to shield against the radiation. Okay, so was this video intended to debunk us or support us? Because that's an interesting tidbit to bring up, but it's not counter to what we were talking about on the show. On all these proposals that they're talking about, putting a base on the moon, or they're talking about hiding the shelter underneath the lunar regolith, to keep them astronauts shielded from the radiation, the solar flares that can pop up at any time without warning. And on the trip there and back, there's talks about using a solar storm shelter, which is questionable considering that Musk never unveiled what it was consisting of. And there's also been proposals to use the Earth's own magnetic field as a natural shield against the radiation. That's assuming you go during the full moon when the moon actually enters this tail, which they didn't do on Apollo. And so yeah, was this video supposed to phase? I'm speaking directly to you here. Were you trying to debunk us or support our argument? Because bringing up this space station, right, is only further indication that there's a severe problem in space known as radiation, which is yet to be solved. If you're going to be putting meters of lunar regolith on the outer walls of the space station in the Lagrange point, okay, obviously you have a huge problem against the radiation. I'm not just talking about cosmic rays. I'm talking about there's solar flares. You can have all these things popping up and striking the station at any time without warning. The same hazard applies to Apollo.
We have over 120, 130 people combined on all platforms. Thanks everyone that made it out. I just wanted to make a point of that. You guys help make these streams possible. It's awesome to have a little auditorium full of people that are willing to learn more each and every day. So thank you everyone that made it out live, and also thank you to everyone that will listen throughout the week when I upload it to the podcast platforms. So I just want to throw that in. We do not take it for granted. We truly appreciate each and one of y'all.
Yeah, I'd like to also say too, Wheezy, that I really appreciate all of the people who support us for producing the videos. And I'd just like to read a few of them. See, we have Derek Cox, we have Pantera 666, we have Cam, we have Skexis, we have Wayne Edwards, we have Bartman31, we have Rex, and we have Stray Dog 2. So we really appreciate the donations that you do give us, because it does help to make the videos, to produce quality videos that are worth watching. So just want to say thank you to you guys, because it really helps to for all of the software to do the production, bring the production value up. So thank you very much for that too.
Yeah. Is it fair assumption that if you don't believe in the moon landing, you as well do not believe in a globe Earth?
So
don't get us started on the flat earthers. Don't get us started on the flat earthers. I'll tell you that now. I noticed a few people commenting in the chat about how's the Earth vacuuming existing in space. Well, you have what's called a thermal velocity, right? You can do the calculations for the thermal velocity at room temperature. None of the particles are moving fast enough to reach escape velocity or even orbital velocity. Okay, and the reason why people need to understand the difference between gas pressure and atmospheric pressure. Okay, the atmospheric pressure is basically the pressure caused by the weight of the air above you. Okay, so basically the higher you go into space, the less air you've got. So that means the less weight you've got, and so it doesn't just suddenly stop and start. It gradually gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner until it finally becomes a near vacuum up there. Okay, so it's not going to go sucking off into space. And if you want any proof that you can see atmospheres existing next to the vacuum of space, get out a telescope and look at Jupiter or Saturn. You can happily see their atmospheres any day of the week, any night of the week, I should say.
But in the nature, something like pressurized air does not exist without container.
Again, you have to understand the difference between gas pressure and atmospheric pressure. In a container, right, your pressure, you got a pressure at a constant pressure. As I said, the atmospheric pressure is a gradient. It varies with altitude. It gets thinner with altitude because
I have a good idea.
I
have a good idea here. Why don't we crowdfund? And I'm serious. Why don't we crowdfund to have one of these guys, a flat earther, go up on one of Bezos's rockets? Because I'm serious. But we'll have to choose somebody that really believes that. And I'll guarantee you, they're going to say it's the windows that are making the Earth curve. You can't win. Honest to God, you just can't win. But if we do this and we do send someone up there, then they're going to have to go and they're going to be ostracized, just like Jaron was.
You don't have to go there, because according
I think Jeranism actually. Go ahead, sir.
No, but yeah, you have to. If you really want to prove it, then let's go there. Seriously.
Okay, so let's maybe start with the word proof. People say about proof. I say there is no 100% proof for anything. There is evidence pointing to proof.
Okay, so but if you go up there, but if you go up in the rocket and you see it with your own eyes, what are you going to say? You're going to deny it?
There is easier way to do it. According to our calculations, we have Earth curvature drop, because if we are on the ball, we should not be able to see ships in certain distance. It does nothing to do with the reflection.
Right, but why is every other planet a sphere?
Every other heavenly
body is a sphere. Every other.
How do you know they are spheres?
You can bounce radio signals off them.
I can show you.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second.
I think no more of this flat Earth stuff. That's enough.
Yeah, this God-loving Arcanist. One quick question. One question to you: sphere or flat? What do you believe?
100% not a sphere. Flat, maybe.
Okay. This guy's a flat earther. Okay, so we're wasting our time with this guy. Sorry to say, but thank you for the other questions you brought up.
I got this, Jera. I got it. Mr. God-loving anarchist, thank you for calling in. I personally don't give a shit what people believe in when it comes to Earth, flat Earth, sphere, whatever. But the Apollo detectives have a hard line on the flat Earth stuff. And so thank you for calling in. Anyone else that wants to call in, please do. Thank you, my man. All right, kick them out. And if anyone wants to join us to ask us some NASA related questions, I know the flat Earth gets contentious. People in the live chat, like I said, I don't give a shit. It's I don't care because I question it all. I think it's healthy to question everything because we've been lied to with everything. But
yeah, sorry about my.
You're good,
I was
man.
just going to say sorry if I came across as rather harsh there. I just get really, really hot under the collar when these things try to find their way into the chat and in our streams and whatnot. We've had many occasions. We've had many occasions of our work being plagiarized by these people and presented out of context and whatnot. And yeah, it just gets me under the collar.
It's fine because they probably feel the same way about you. So it goes both ways. And I don't want that to happen. We should be able to, at least, even if we don't agree that way or that way, we should at least come together knowing that NASA lies to us. We've been lied to. That should be the common ground. I personally don't like these divisions, man. I don't like it at all. I know.
Well, I understand that. But the flat Earth it is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. I listen, man. I flew since 1979 to 1992, and I'll tell you something. There's no way that on our aircraft we have an inertial navigation system. It cannot function on a flat Earth. It's that simple. You cannot get coordinates off of a flat Earth. It will not work. If I did that, swear, I tell you, I would be in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere, and I'd be out of fuel, and I wouldn't be anywhere near my destination. The point is the plane cannot make, every time you make the smallest turn, it calculates that turn, and yet looks at the position relative to where you are on the Earth. If the Earth was flat, it won't work. We've tried it, or not we, but what do you call that? That mentor pilot has tried it. He's experimented doing that kind of stuff, and he has a whole video on that. And I concur with him because I've been there. So there's no way.
I'm with you, Robert. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm only saying.
I'd like to point out
hold up, Jared, please. I just want to make this clear. I'm with you. I'm not a flat earther. I believe we live on a globe. My only concern comes with people because it's not that people want to believe in flat earth. I just think we've been lied to so much. And that's why people head that direction. And so that's just my view. And like I said, I'm with you guys. I'm not on the other side. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it differently and maybe you guys disagree. It is what it is.
It's sort of like the boy who cried wolf, really. You know, when you got NASA telling you all these lies about Apollo, people start to question, everything that they do. But there has to be some personal responsibility. I don't believe that we live on a sphere because I've been told. I know we live on a sphere because I have firsthand experience. I don't need NASA to prove that the Earth is a sphere. I can.
You got another caller.
Question.
Hold up, Jared. We've got another caller. I don't want to take too much time talking about flat earth. Let's get with the good stuff.
All right, great.
All right.
Stuff.
Here we go. I have a question. What is your question?
Hi guys. Thanks a lot. I've been a fan and I've been following you guys for quite some time. I had a question about, I'm following the flat earthers. I want to see what's the best argument. And one thing, I've researched and haven't found much there. But there's one thing that gets me curious. They show this video footage coming from ISS, and there seems to be some shenanigan going on. I was wondering if you have seen those videos and, what do you think?
Yeah, I've seen quite a few of them. I can answer that. I'd like to take this one. Yes, I've seen a lot of them, and I mean a lot of them. I've seen the one where they've gone through the door and he vanishes. I've seen the one where things have dropped on the ground. I've seen the ones where you have faces that are inside of iPads that look demonic. I've seen all that kind of stuff that are on there. But there was one guy called the Sneezing Monkey. Now, if you go over to his channel, he has taken it apart piece by piece and has explained it all in nauseating detail. And you'll find that what he has to say is incredible. And I was really impressed with what he can do and the way he presents it. So it really is, when you look at the whole thing, he shows why, he shows how, and how things work, and he also shows the other side of the door. He doesn't just show the guy vanishing, but he says, okay, that's fine, he vanished, yeah, fine. Well, let's look at the other side, the camera on the opposite side of that door, and the guy goes straight through it. You see, it's just a glitch in the way the camera systems work. And there was another guy there that was dropping things all over the place, and it turned out it was a magic show that he was putting on. And and flat earthers took that out of context, and they were showing it all over the place, that there was cards falling and bolts falling, but the guy had that thin magician's line that he was using, and he had them attached to the cards and the bolts, and they were dropping because they were being literally pulled down by that string. Sneezy Monkey went through all that, and the guy was showing on the ISS. Then he demonstrated the trick, and he showed you where that little magician's wire was, or where he had it, right? So you got to also look at it from that point of view.
Yeah, I'm gonna check out that channel, because I'm really curious to see, if there are good explanations for.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description over on the Apollo Detectives channel for you.
That'd be awesome.
Sure.
Maybe I can ask you guys another question about this channel called Moon Fakery. I'm pretty sure you guys must know about it. I think it's run by a Russian guy.
Yes, I'm familiar with that website. They used to publish some of my videos translated in Russian, which I thought was nice. Although they have begun posting a few videos by these Russians who are not just doubting the Apollo missions, but also various other American flights, which views I do not share. Like they were claiming that the Gemini 4 spacewalk of Ed White was faked because of the way the helmet was shifting this way and that. Look at my head. But here's the thing, you see, the helmets that they have on Gemini was very different to what they have on the modern shuttle, and even the Apollo helmets, right? On Apollo, they just had a little fishbowl, essentially, that they put over their head as a pressure thing. And then over that, they would drape this outer helmet, which had the gold visor and whatnot. Okay, but on Gemini, it was very, very different. You see, it was more like a crash helmet, like a helmet that you wear on a motorcycle. They would obviously, it was much more sealed than a crash helmet, but basically it was the same thing. It was attached to a actual neck piece, right, which allowed for mobility of the neck, so we could look this way and that. And so it was sort of an apples and oranges comparison, really. And so
also, Jerry, you take a look at the green screen. Now, there was a comment here. The green screen technology that they use, there is no green screens on the ISS. Just wait before you get any further on this. There's a chroma key system that is on the ISS that they use to do presentations with, but that's it. And that's not what you're seeing. When you see George Bush, I believe it was, President Bush, he was being wheeled by that monitor. That's not a chroma key monitor. That is a whole different thing. A chroma key system has grid patterns on it of all different dimensions around it in the middle, and that's for tracking. But this system was not a tracking system on the ISS by no means. And I just wanted to make that 100% clear.
Okay, Robert. Okay, I have a question. I'm going to have to kick you off the studio.
Sure.
We've got another call in.
Guys.
Thank you for calling in, my brother.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks for the questions.
Yes, sir. All right, we've got another caller. What's going on, Mr. SE Montreal?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good
evening.
I have, I must say, because I'm a big fan of you guys, but I must say, I'm kind of put off in the way you treated that flat earther. It's like, yeah, you guys are like, okay, you're open to stuff, and like you guys should be like at the forefront of this kind of discussion, especially like the pressure that he brought up. And Jara just thinks he can say, well, you don't understand, it's atmospheric pressure. So I mean,
well, I answered him as best as I. Well, let me just respond to that. I answered him to the best of my abilities. You see, there's a difference between flat earthers and people who are actually legitimately asking questions. You see, a person who's legitimately asking a question doesn't know the answer, and they want to understand why it works this way or that way. Okay, whereas a flat earther, they've already got this predetermined conclusion that it's flat, and or that a pressure can't exist next to space. And when you try to explain that, they don't accept the answer. When I explained that to him, and they actually Robert asked why is every planet in the solar system a sphere but not the Earth? And he said, how do you know that they're spheres? And well, that's a very easy question. You can actually see them through a telescope. Okay, this is not something that you need to rely on NASA to prove to you. You can get out a telescope. I've seen Saturn. I've seen Jupiter. I've seen them through a telescope. I did my degree in astrophysics. Okay, I have firsthand experience looking through these telescopes and actually seeing these things. And as a geologist, I have firsthand experience looking into the Earth itself. With seismology and whatnot. You can map the interior of the Earth through the seismic readings. Okay, you explain this to these people, but they just simply shut you out. Okay, and another point too, we can determine how far away these worlds are by bouncing radio signals off the planets. In fact, in the days before we had telecommunication satellites, how we would communicate around the surface, around the curvature of the Earth. We would fire a radio signal at the moon and bounce that radio signal towards the person on the receiving end on the other side of the world. Okay, if the Earth was flat, there would be no need for this stuff. You could literally everything would be in line of sight as long as there's no buildings whatnot in the way. A radio tower. People ask, well, why do we have a radio tower every three miles, or whatever it is, to make a good phone call? It's because the Earth is a sphere. You can't receive signals from a tower that's transmitting below the curvature. So we have radio towers all these different intervals to transmit the signals across. So you can explain that to all these people, but they do not want to listen. Okay, so if I get a bit frustrated and angry by these people, it's first of all because they don't want to hear the answers to their question, and second of all because we've all had our share of our work being taken out of context and sliced and diced by these people. What they fail to realize is they can quote us out of context all they want, but they fail to realize is that our position is only consistent with the Earth being a sphere and space travel being real. We talked about the Zond 5 hoax scenario where they duped the Americans into thinking that they had sent a cosmonaut around the moon. Well, here's another thing too. He brought up the Van Allen radiation belts. How do you think we know the Van Allen radiation belts exist? It's because we sent probes up into the space to actually detect it. With Geiger counters to measure these things. And so, you can't claim.
Well, you can. I don't know, man. The whole space travel thing is up for question. Randy Walsh, our good friend, makes a valid point regarding the F1 engines. If there is no information for, I know what you're not talking about, but what I'm saying is, I question it all. I don't know. I mean, when you look at the ISS, the satellites across, they don't look that damn far at all. They're not that high up, but we're told they're what, 100,000 miles up in the sky, whatever the hell they are. It's ridiculous. And so I'm not, this is why I like the show. We should be able to have different opinions. I just looked up the deepest shipwreck that we have found is only 22,000 feet deep. And this is like crazy deep. And it's super hard to get to this shipwreck. But we can send these machines, all these hundreds of thousand miles up in space through these Van Allen belts. I have a hard time accepting that.
Submarines and spacecraft are a little bit different things because in one case you've got an outward pressure of the internal pressure of the cabin, and in the other case you've got an inward pressure of the water that's pushing down and crushing you. Okay, yes. Like I don't remember the numbers. It's something like for every meter you go down, you get like something like thrice the weight or something of the water above you. I don't remember the numbers of time. You can look that up. But the point is, it gets very, very heavy, and it gets to the point where you have to have these very, very strong walls to the point that to maintain the integrity of the submersible.
Exactly my point, Jared. That's exactly my point. It's super
That's due to
hard
the
and
inward-
crazy, but we
That's due
we
to the
have no
inward pressure of the
issue.
water.
We have no issue sending a damn Voyager one day of light years out there.
You seem to be missing the point I'm trying to make. In one case, you've got an inward pressure with the submarines, which is threatening to crush the spacecraft, and on the other case, there is no pressure. For all intents and
I
purposes,
think you're
if the
missing my
spacecraft
point,
is
Jared.
unpressed-
My point is the technology, capabilities. That's my point.
Well, as I said, I think the Voyager checks out because we've had people detect the signals from it, and if you're
I
going to
don't
go
think
through
it
the trouble of
checks out,
sending a
man.
probe,
I
well, if you're going to go through the
agree to
trouble of
disagree.
sending a signal, if you're going to send the probe all the way that far away in space just to send you, let's say the signals are fake, right? What would be the point of faking that mission if you can send the probe all the way that far distance out?
What
why
would
not
be
just
the
send a
whole
real
point of
probe out?
faking the whole moon landings? I mean,
Because you can't survive the
defeats
radiation.
this whole thing.
But because you can't survive the radiation, we're talking about unmanned craft now. They can happily, be exposed to this, provided they're radiation hardened, of course. You can send radiation hardened instruments. I believe the Voyagers, they use microchips, silicon electronics. These are more resistant to radiation than most household computers and whatnot. If you try to put that in the Van Allen belts, it would be destroyed very easily, your household computer. And in fact, on the Hubble, they actually have to shut down some of the instruments when they do when they do South Atlantic Anomaly Transit. They have to do that to avoid damaging certain instruments. And so various satellites that are designed to try to measure this stuff, they have to be hardened against this kind of radiation. So it's one thing to shield your instruments and shield your spacecraft against the radiation, but it's another thing when you talk about shielding the humans, because not just do you have to worry about shielding the humans, you've also got the excess weight of all their life support systems, their water supplies, their food supplies, all this sort of stuff. Every ounce costs money to launch into space, and it adds to the overall mass of your rocket. Okay, and so the more mass you put in there, the more expensive this thing's going to launch, more rocket, because you need more rocket fuel to put it up there in the first place. So I say keep your expectations in check and compare like with like is what I'm saying.
I hear you loud and clear. I just don't buy it. That's fine. We can agree to disagree. Mr. Marcus Allen, we haven't heard from you in a bit. What are your thoughts, sir?
I was just fascinated by this whole diversionary tactic that seems to have been introduced. It's interesting to have a look at when this whole flat earth story became associated with Apollo. It's almost as if it was a deliberate tactic by some quite clever chap out there who spotted the whole Apollo, was it real crowd, like people like us around saying it didn't actually happen the way it was supposed to and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, hey, somebody's actually spotted what's been going on. We better get diversionary tactics involved here. So how about introducing the flat earth as being a diversionary tactic? Because they'll all get terribly overexcited about it. They start contradicting each other and start making ridiculous assumptions about it all. And that will divert attention from Apollo. Now, I think that was first introduced about 20 years ago, if I remember rightly, about 2004, 2005, when we first started hearing about this. And I have to say that the Flat Earth Society originated, I believe, in the UK about 150 years ago. I don't quite know why. I've never really followed it particularly. But I got invited to discuss Flat Earth on some debate channel. And I thought, well, why do you want me on to discuss it? Well, because you dispute Apollo. And I say, yes, I do, but I have nothing to say about Flat Earth. Oh, well, you could come on. We've got people who know all about it. I said, I'm not interested. I don't know enough about it to be able to hold my own against anybody who's allegedly aware of what Flat Earth is about. So find somebody else. So they did, fortunately. So why is this such a big subject? I mean, Jara has comprehensively comprehensively debunked it as being anything worth studying, it seems to be a pseudoscience of the worst sort.
Yes. Well, the thing is, Mark, it's just one last thing.
Yep.
Again, if it was flat, as they claim, our inertial navigation systems would not work on an aircraft. It would be impossible. And that's as simple as that.
Show it too.
Yeah.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
But I mean, basically, I was looking at what was it about the Apollo skeptics, which we would claim to be, that so concerned the powers that be, assuming that there are any. I can't name one, so I don't know who they are, but I'm sure they are around somewhere. Raza has alluded to the fact of the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, is possibly the major source of a lot of the stories that get put out. BIS also stands for British Interplanetary Society, by the way. The world's longest established space advocacy society, of which I'm a member and have been for a long time, ever since I was invited to speak there to explain my theories about why Apollo never happened. Of course, being a space advocacy society with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and all the other guys as honorary members, I was considered to be a heretic of the worst sort and shouldn't be invited. But it was too late. I had to be invited, and I was invited to speak about Apollo. And don't talk about any hoax theories, Marcus, they said. Oh, well, that's quite easy. I just showed them the photographs. So I showed a few photographs. My presentation there was 2012. And there are a few things I've discovered since then. The prime one, ironically, was my attending a talk at the British Interplanetary Society in 2019, when the designer of the Hexagon spy satellite, having been declassified a few years earlier, was now able to speak about his really magnificent work in what he'd done to create the spy satellite, KH-9, the Hexagon spy satellite. And he said at that time, almost in passing, he was talking about it. He said, well, of course, we had to keep all the film under pressure. You know, film, the stuff that very few people even use nowadays, this stuff, photographic film, we had to keep it under pressure in the spacecraft to stop it fogging up and doing all the other things that happen when it's put in a vacuum. I thought, I'd never heard that before. This is quite new. This is 2019. It had only been declassified a few years earlier, so that's why I hadn't heard about it, nor had anybody else. So being able to discuss the effect of vacuum on photographic film was a new situation. And Robert...
Oh, yes, Marcus. Well, what about, see now Darkburn has this one. He says, oh, what about the Corona satellites? They weren't pressurized.
How do you know?
Yeah, how do you know?
Yeah, it was pressurized because the only other spacecraft to use photographic film was the lunar orbiter. We've discussed that already. Not the lunar reconnaissance orbiter. That came in 2009. But the lunar orbiter.
Yes, and that was 1.2 psi of nitrogen in that container.
There you go.
And I think the Coronas would have had to have been pressurized anyways, because if I recall correctly, on those earlier missions, they weren't scanning the images and transmitting them back to Earth. They literally would jettison the actual film canisters back down to the Earth and had to survive the re-entry, where they got picked up by a plane, timed to fly in the landing zone, and they had this apparatus, I forget what they're called right now, where it would basically
was a net
skyhook the canister and basically transfer it back to the secret base where it was doing, where they would develop this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting that one of the consultants to NASA on the construction of the lunar orbiter was Edwin Land, the creator of the Polaroid system, Polaroid photographic system, which is basically uses chemicals to develop the film And in orbit around the moon, of course, there's much harder vacuum than there is around Earth. So let's have less of the idea that photographic film can be used in space without pressure. It has to be pressurized. If you don't know that, you haven't done your research. So let's get real about what is required. This is basically science. There's no conspiracy involved here. It's science. If you're going to put photographic film into space, you've got to keep it pressurized. End of story. Use a vacuum chamber to prove it. We've done it.
Well, look at Bill Demos. Yeah, look at Bill Demos. I mean,
yeah,
he put our film in there, and he put one of his friends' films in there just to see what would happen. Both fogged. As a matter of fact, his friend's film fogged more than ours did. Actually, the color balance in ours just went to pot.
Yep.
As did his.
I see dark fenners. I was just going to say, I see dark fenners, right? Would be a problem for you to find out it was unpressurized, wouldn't it? Well, if you got evidence to the contrary, post your reference in the chat. Post reference in the chat, and we'll look into it.
Yeah. But see, I think we give Dark Fen too much attention. He's just saying stupid crap. He's never going to hit the StreamYard, so why should we? If he were to call the StreamYard, we could entertain him for a while, no question. But he's not going to do it. He's just going to be saying his stupid little comments in the live chat. So let's just ignore him. I
would like to bring the discussion back to something that Marcus had said about the simulations. I've actually got the reference in here. This is Gene Cran's book, Failure is Not an Option. On page 234, he's writing here about the Apollo simulators. They would train all their technicians with the simulator data sent over the landlines to their control centers, whatnot. He says, in the late 1960s, our simulation technology had regressed to the point it became virtually impossible to separate the training from the actual missions. The simulations became full dress rehearsals for the missions down to the smallest details. The simulations tested the crews and controllers' responses to normal and emergency situations. It checked out the exact flight plan and mission rules and procedures that the crew and controllers would use during the flight.
Awesome. I know Dr. Raz has been quiet and he's been patiently waiting. He has a presentation for us.
Oh,
sorry,
good.
Dr. Raza. I wanted to get you in.
Yeah. Oh, let's see it. This should be good.
Yes, sir. You're muted, bro. You're muted.
I think this Sem guy had one more question. I think.
Yeah, SC Montreal, you had another one?
Yeah, I would love to. Look, I don't want to press you guys on this, but I think it needs a bit of pressing because you're so spot on with the pressure and with the vacuum and with the film and like I watched all your stuff. But now I'm curious, like, how do you incorporate this when you say atmospheric pressure? And my question to you is, and you're right, things in pressure have to be encased. What do you think the transition is here on Earth, right? Let's go in reality. How do you think that works? The atmosphere next to a vacuum.
It works because of gravity. Okay, the Earth attracts atmosphere because the Earth is gravity. It doesn't need to be in a container. Jared never said it needs to be in a container. Atmosphere exists because of gravity, and for flat earther, there's no such thing as gravity. It's just that simple. Do you believe in gravity?
Hold on. Which gravity are you referring to? Are you referring to
the Earth's
Newtonian
gravity?
or Einsteinian?
Let me get this just straight here. Newtonian gravity is for measuring falling objects towards the surface of the Earth. With Einsteinian gravity, okay, that's a different thing altogether. We're talking about the bending of space-time. For something much more localized, like objects falling towards the center of a planet's mass, we use Newtonian gravity for that. Newtonian gravity cannot explain bending of space-time, so we use Einsteinian gravity for that. That's a different thing you're talking about altogether.
So gravity for you is a concept, and it's not an actual thing. You think you can pick and choose which gravity. In other words, you believe in a time. You believe that they took time and space, put it together, and made a fabric. That's one gravity that you believe in. But you also believe in the Newtonian one, kind of like a magnetism kind of style, right? So to you, I guess gravity is just a concept.
You're putting what I said into a different context and stuff. I specifically said for there's the vastness of space, right? The bending of space-time, Newtonian gravity, it cannot explain that. So we use Einsteinian gravity in that sense. Okay, it covers it more broadly, you see.
Yeah, but hasn't it been superseded? If I'm not mistaken, Newtonian gravity was superseded by the Einsteinian one.
As again, the Einsteinian one the Einsteinian one is used for describing the bending of space-time, okay? Whereas Newtonian's gravity discusses objects falling in gravity fields. In fact, somebody here actually left a comment in the chat, okay? 9.8 meters per second squared. That's the acceleration due to gravity. The Newtonians is discussing objects being accelerated towards the center of a celestial body.
Okay, then, sir. What mechanism do you perceive this happening? What is the mechanism of the gravity that you think is happening?
Don't even waste time.
We're talking about the atmosphere. We're talking about the atmosphere. We're talking about Newtonian gravity in that sense.
And the mechanism is?
As objects, the objects fall towards the center of a larger object's mass. Okay, the everything wants to be is attracted to each other with the mass, more massive objects.
Experiment, Jared. Cavendish experiment.
Yes, the Cavendish experiment. That's a good example of such. You can use to demonstrate that. You know.
So mass attracting mass is what you're trying to say.
Yes, and the Cavendish experiment proves that. They do that in the universities to prove it to themselves. They make the students do those in the physics classes in the first year.
Yeah, the problem is they never work, and there's one professor that actually sawed one in half. So you guys might want to look into that. Yeah, I just want to point out that this is not clear cut. You know, I just want to push a little bit back that, like, I'm with Weezer on this. Like, this is not clear cut, right? This is not as clear cut as we make it out to be, and there are legitimate questions, right? I'll give you an example.
Well, if we knew, hey, listen, if we knew everything about gravity, then we would have anti-gravity ships flying around, and airplanes would be obsolete.
Agreed. That's my whole point. Yeah.
All right. I think let's let Dr. Raza. Well,
Raza,
Dr. Raza's been waiting.
We haven't given Raza a turn yet here.
Yeah, go ahead, Raza.
I'm just waiting for us to stop wasting time on these flat Earth questions.
It's not a flat Earth. I never mentioned
it is a flat Earth. You don't believe in gravity? Bye bye.
I didn't say I don't believe in gravity.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Montreal. Montreal, let me ask you a question. Do you know what a gravitometer is?
Yes.
Okay, and I have personal experience using those things. They would not work if gravity didn't exist. Okay.
Do you know what the Bremen drop tower is, sir?
The what, sorry?
The Bremen drop tower.
I'm not hearing your voice clearly. Did you say drop tower?
Bremen drop tower.
Yes, the Bremen drop tower. Before, it's a drop tower in Germany.
What about it?
Okay. They say that gravity is uniform, right? When you drop something, they all fall at the same rate. They all hit the ground at the same time.
Yes. Again, that's they did something similar. Galileo did something similar with the Tower of Pisa, where he had one ball that was heavy, one ball that was lighter. They both dropped them off the Tower of Pisa. They both fell at the same rate.
Well, that's a myth, actually. He never dropped them off the tower. He rolled them off. So, but that's irrelevant. But the current one that I'm talking about is they had some different elements like lithium, lead, iron, and they dropped them from this tower. And guess what? They didn't fall. They didn't all fall at the same rate. I'm just saying that because this gravity thing is not clear cut, and I want to put your attention and your listeners' attention to it. The Bremen drop tower test.
And what are you trying to prove?
What I'm trying to prove is that when you guys talk about gravity willy-nilly and you say like Einsteinian or Newtonian, I'm just trying to tell you there's some research and it doesn't exactly fit what they say it is. I'm trying to tell you that things do not fall at the same rate the way they say they do. They don't hit the ground at the same rate.
And how does this apply to Apollo?
How did this apply to Apollo? Well, I can ask you about escape velocity. I can ask you about open, closed, and isolated systems. Of course, you're familiar with that, right?
All right. What's escape velocity from Earth?
25,000 miles an hour.
Correct. Well done. Okay. So if you have
Okay, I found the. Go ahead.
If you have to achieve that speed, which is quite fast, 40,000 kilometers an hour or something like that, it's quite fast. Why do you have to achieve that speed? And what happens when you do? Do you get
well, the
pulled
story
back
goes
forward?
is in order to break Earth's gravitational pull, right? You need to reach that speed. That's
Yep.
the story. Yeah, we're all familiar with it. And in order to reach orbital velocity, I believe it's 17,500, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, now I'll put this to you. In the model, they say that we lose gases, right? Every day?
Lose what every day?
Gas. Certain
Gas.
I think he's
gases,
talking about
right?
atmospheric gases.
Yes. Now, my question to you is, how do they reach escape velocity?
They don't reach. There's a difference between reaching escape velocity and reaching space. The gas will leave it. Will leave escape velocity if it's heated enough. If you do the calculations, there's a thermal velocity calculation can do that. Okay. For the most part, the gases aren't traveling at escape velocity. Okay. They barely get it fast enough to reach orbital velocity. Okay. But what causes the atmosphere to escape it is impacts with the solar wind every now and then. You know, it's obviously it's reduced significantly, thank God, because we have a magnetic field, okay, which filters much of it out. But of the stuff that gets there, some of it gets brushed off the uppermost level of the atmosphere by the sun's radiation. Okay, that happens on the other planets too. Okay, they reckon that's happened on Mercury, hence why it has no atmosphere now, or almost none. And they reckon that happened on the moon as well, hence almost no atmosphere there. Okay, but again, like you're talking about the atmosphere trying to escape. Again, all the air molecules, they're accelerated towards the Earth at 9.8 meters per second squared. Okay, all the additional layers of atmosphere that you're dealing with, it adds pressure, it builds pressure towards the surface. Okay. And the reason it doesn't just suddenly go flying off in space is because it's not a gas pressure, it's atmospheric pressure. Okay, a gas pressure is constant. All the pressure inside this chamber, okay, it's all the same pressure. Okay, if you suddenly take away that container, it's going to expand outward and equalize. Okay, that's not how the atmosphere works. It's basically a gradient. The higher you get into the atmosphere, the thinner it gets. Okay, and finally it gets to the point where it's almost a near vacuum. Almost a vacuum, essentially. Okay, so it doesn't suddenly shoot off like that.
There's no barrier.
Sorry,
there?
what?
There is
doesn't
no
need
barrier
a physical
at
barrier.
that point. Sorry.
I said it doesn't need a physical barrier because the gravity is doing the job. Okay, and now
Okay, so we have
that is Newtonian.
Oh, you know what, Jared? You know who has a good experiment on that? Thunderfoot did one 3 months ago when he had a really good experiment set up to show how much air actually weighs in a given system, and he has a chamber and everything else. That was interesting, and maybe you should watch that one. That was really neat. That really explained it well to me, because you could actually see what was happening when he had scales. Like, he weighed it with one of those atomic scales. It was incredible what he did.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyways, guys, thanks.
Okay, and next question for Mr. Montreal. Is it Essie? Montreal?
Yeah, you can just call me Essie. Yeah.
All right, Essie. Next question. If escape velocity from Earth is 25,000 miles an hour and the moon is 240,000 miles away, why does it take 3 days to get there and not 10 hours?
Oh, you want me to tell you the answer for the model? How they claim it? Because the way they claim it is they coast there, right? They
That's
slingshot
correct, yeah.
around the Earth, and they coast there. And I'm sure you know at one point they reach
Yeah, but
almost
why
zero.
does it coast there? Why does it coast there? That's the question he's asking. Why does it coast there? Why does the mission take 4 days? I can tell you the
Well, I
answer
was
right now
about
if
to
you
explain
don't know
it
the answer.
because they use the way they explain it. I'm not saying I believe this. I'm just saying this is the way they explain it, right? They say that they slingshot, they go around the Earth, and they use that momentum, and they fire their rockets, and they coast there. Now, why? What do you mean why? That's the model. They
Okay,
coast
I'll
there,
explain it.
and sorry.
Direct it is, I suppose. I'll give you the answer. Okay, the reason why it's supposed to take 4 days is because as you move away from the planet, right, the relentless gravity starts to rob you of your velocity. Okay, move towards the planet, gravity speeds you up. Move away from the planet, gravity slows you down. Okay.
Well, I was just
And
about to
so
explain that.
speed is
They
not
said the
constant.
gravity well. Yeah, they explain it as you leave the Earth. You go into the gravity well. You slow down, and they show it with the Artemis. It reaches to almost zero, and then the moon's gravity overtakes. We all know the story. I mean,
Okay,
it's not like.
I'm just going to say, I think I found your Bremen Tower. According to this article I'm reading here, it's pressurized to normal atmosphere. Okay, and I can't see anything in here about it using a vacuum chamber or this or that. So if they're not even depressurizing this drop chamber, then obviously you might encounter some air resistance, which may affect the rate of the object's fall. Okay, you need to consider all factors.
It's in a vacuum, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you should check it more. I'm pretty sure
I'm reading this article here about this is ESA's website. They're talking about this chamber in this drop tower in Bremen, and I can't seem to find anything about it being pressurized.
Yeah, it's in a vacuum. And, they did an experiment 20 years ago, and it's funny, right? Let me just tell you quickly about it. They wanted to redo it, and they didn't allow them to do it, so they took them to court, and it was a big kerfuffle. Try to find out, and I wish I came more prepared because I really wasn't prepared to talk about this, but you can easily find what I'm talking about.
Looking up here, if I find it, I'll let you guys know. But all I can see here is talk about using a pressurized drop. So the best answer I can give you for that regard would be additional air resistance, affecting the rate of the fall. That's why where they like to have vacuum chambers to drop two objects at the same time and see out, because then you've got no air resistance. You're basically eliminating any outside forces.
I don't know what you found, sir, but the one I'm telling you was in a pressurized chamber, so there's no idea of air resistance or anything like that. Is the one you're looking at, does it have like lithium? Is it a chamber with different
Let me see if I'll post the link in the chat. I'll post the link in the chat if you want.
Okay.
Post the link in the chat. Weezy, you want to share this?
Yeah, once you have it. Oh, you put it in the private chat. My bad.
I thought Raza had a presentation.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He keeps getting distracted.
Okay, let's go.
Maybe we'll cover this.
Sorry, guys, my fault. Sorry.
We'll cover this and then give Dr. Raza the floor. He's been patient about it. All right. Present. Here we go.
Is this the scroll down? They show the one in Bremen. The Zam drop tower. Is this the one you're talking about? Yeah, just scroll up again. Doesn't really matter. That's all I can find in there. I can't. They talk about it being pressurized to the atmospheric pressure. I can't find anything about it being a vacuum. So if they're not dropping the things in a vacuum, that's bound to encounter some air resistance here or there. That might be the cause for certain objects not falling at the same rate. But thank you for sharing it with us. If we find anything about that, we'll look into that and we'll get back to you on those lines.
You're welcome. Thanks for the time, and I'll try to find it. And next time, I'll post it for you guys. Okay. Thanks a lot for the time.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, SC Montreal. Take care. All right, boss. All right, Dr. Raza, what is your presentation? He has to meditate. He's got to find his inner chi. Is that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get all this flat Earth out of my system now. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention me and Robert are working on a new video which I call the 5 new smoking guns, and this is going to be really great. So hopefully I can just share with you the first one here, and I think you guys will really appreciate this. So let me try to share screen.
Dr. Raza, we haven't spoken in a while, man. I just want to let you know that I freaking love you. So I hope you've been good, my man. Good to see you.
What happened to my...
Where are you going to share screen it, or are you going to put it in the private chat?
I'm trying. Just a second.
Okay. For those new followers, Dr. Raza and I have done several episodes. One episode we did was on the original Smoking Guns, and that is number 2 on my all-time downloaded episodes. I'm hitting up 300 episodes. Dr. Raza's show with me, it's number 2 in the all-time downloaded. So yeah, the people love to hear from Mr. Dr. Raza. All right. Okay. It is up on the screen now.
Here we go. Oh, hello. That's Buzz.
Come on. Come and get it.
Well, I made him walk around on the moon there. You're going to see that in the next video coming up.
Oh,
just a little teaser.
All right. So you guys can see this, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to make the screen bigger. There you go.
All right. That's great.
That's good.
So I'm going to show you exactly how NASA faked this thing. So we have over here is called, I'll kind of walk you through this for people who are not familiar with Photoshop. This is called the lasso tool, okay? So I'm just outlining a section of the background. See how I did that? Now, come back over here. So I'm going to go edit, copy, paste. And now we get another layer here. I'm going to come back to my background, get the lasso tool again, draw another line, another box, you say. All right. I hope you can see my little mouse doing this.
Yeah, we see that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
edit, copy, paste. All right. So coming back to my layers, coming back to my background, getting the lasso tool again, going around it, and it's finished. Edit, copy, edit, paste. Okay, now I've got these 4 layers. There's the layer 1, layer 2, and then there's the background. Now
we can't quite see the individual layers, Raza. Maybe it's not showing up in
it's
your
not bad. I'm going to try to walk you through. There's some people who are only listening to audio. So, okay, so I just created a group for the layers. So we call this group 1. And I'm going to grab layer 2, and I'm going to grab layer 1. And there's my group 1 layers. Now, here we go. We go to the image. Oops. That didn't work. I didn't get so much time to practice this.
Nor did NASA.
Yeah.
I can see where you go with this.
Oh, it was working last night.
Well, why don't you try reloading the image again?
Let me just
Because if there's no layers to that, it won't show.
I think this is going to work now. Let's see if this works. Oh, it didn't work.
Yeah, you brightened it up. No, we see the change, mate. You brightened up the part of the landscape.
Yeah, I was trying to get them all nice together, but okay. It worked last night. It wasn't working today.
What are you trying to pull the layers?
Oh, okay, I think I got it now. Okay, so let's try this. Yes. Okay, now we've got it. All right, so here we go. This is how NASA faked the moon landing. Ta-da! The moon landings are real. The moon landings were fake. The moon landings are real. The moon
Wait. Yeah, okay, I see what you're doing. So if you're looking at the video, you can see the faint differences.
Yeah, so I just selected. So here you can see there's a man standing under a spotlight because the background is all dark. And now you just, ta-da! The moon landings were real.
This is wild.
So,
A lot of these changes were made in 2009. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in 2004, they removed all their old images, which look like this. And then in 2009, they uploaded all the new images where they had fixed the background.
Yeah, but on March to the Moon, Raza, on March to the Moon, that image, all of the images there have a purplish hue to them. All of them do, but not this one.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact,
yeah, I'm just. This was just a quick, few-minute Photoshop job. To do it properly, I would have to edit the colors and this and that. But I'm just showing you how easy it is to make a fake look, to make a man who's standing under a spotlight look like a man who's standing on the moon. Okay, so this is how easy it was for them to fake this thing.
I covered this topic about oh my god, back in 2008 or 2009, I think it was. We did a video called "Moon Faker Posing for Portrait," where I showed that the early release of the pictures. I managed to find the West Australian, one of the first papers to publish this image, and it clearly showed the same fall off that we've come to see on these pictures. People they said, well, the original picture doesn't show this kind of fall off. Well, that's what it showed in the original newspapers. We showed these darkened areas surrounding the landscape, and somebody actually showed me, okay, we'll take one of your fall off images and try brightening it up to the point that it resembles this. He showed this so-called raw image, which was just like a photograph of the negative or whatever and stuff. Show us a brightened version of yours that has the same level of detail. All right, I accept your challenge, and I did a whole video basically showing the step-by-step process of how I did adjusting the brightness and the gamma and all that sort of stuff. And hey, they were identical.
Yeah,
you can look that up. Called Moonfaker Posing for Portrait.
In fact, there's an interesting clue that one can look. That particular photograph of dear old Buzz on the moon, if you look at the top of his helmet, it's black. If you look at the more recent photographs, it's grey. They've tried to lighten the whole thing and given the game away by doing so. Because David Percy was the first. There we go. That's the one. The left-hand photograph is the brightened one. The right-hand photograph there is the darkened one, the original one posted by NASA. And David Percy identified that when he published Dark Moon in about 1997, I think it was, he published it. So it's been around for a while, but it's good to see it. It's good to spot how these things are done. Yeah, Dark Moon, the definitive book on the subject. Anybody hasn't read that, you're missing out on a lot of the detail.
Hey, Raza, we can hear some stuff in the background.
Might be mine.
There you go.
Yeah, I can't hear it. Perhaps I'm deaf.
Yeah, you're good now. I'm sorry, Mr. Allen. Go on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, Photoshop was first introduced in the form that could alter the photographs, as Raza has shown, I think in 1989, somewhere around there.
92? I thought it was 92 when they put it up. Could be wrong, though.
maybe it was a more recent version of it, but it said it is always said that there is no one individual on the planet who understands everything incorporated into Photoshop. Nobody can fully explain everything there because it's been contributed to by so many different people. It's a very useful tool. It's a very impressive piece of technology. Whether it's been used by NASA, never a straight answer, to alter the Apollo images is open to debate. It certainly would appear.
Yeah, you know what they did? Remember back in the day, what they used to do on the optical printer, they used to flash those images, and that's how they got the brightness on them. Remember,
Yep.
Tim explained that whole thing to us. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's certainly worth checking out optical printers and how they were used to create the hundreds of hours of video film that is used by people to demonstrate how Apollo happened. If you don't know what an optical printer is, check it out. It's just like a photocopier, but for film. So once you understand that, you understand how the whole thing was done, and it's been explained in considerable detail by an anonymous contributor who created the film Make Believe, Smoke and Mirrors, which is available on the Apollo Detectives website. It's available on the owlist.com website. Ironically, when it was first posted, it only received a few hundred views before it was taken down. Fortunately, enough people had archived it so we can still watch it. We don't know who it was who created it. It's never been established. There are certain individuals who might have contributed to it because they have sufficient understanding of film technology and in-camera operation of special effects. Not CGI, not digital effects, but in-camera effects. And probably the foremost exponent of in-camera effects was the special effects director on 2001: A Space Odyssey, Douglas Trumbull, who is considered to be a master of that particular technology. And also the Star Wars technology as well, which was very advanced at the time. It was all in camera. It was done on film. It wasn't special effects. Well, they were special effects, but they were done in camera. Back to the Future, using miniatures, filmed with special lenses to ensure that when you saw the miniature models that were used in that film, they appeared to be life-sized. Like the Grand Prix on Apollo, was it 16? Where they drive their lunar rover at high speed across the lunar surface. And the question is, well, it must have been a huge set. No, it was a small model car that was used. The set was probably about 100 feet across. So once you start to understand how miniatures are used, and there's plenty of evidence in the photographs, you know, the famous Apollo photographs taken on the moon using Kodak Ektachrome film that wasn't damaged by the vacuum on the moon. No, it was all filmed here on Earth, guys. Prove me wrong. I'd like to hear it. So once
100%.
So once you got a grasp of the technology behind it, it was probably all done at what's that famous place in Laurel Canyon? Lookout Mountain Laboratory.
Yes.
US Air Force Film Technology Center. It's now a private house owned by Jared Leto, the actor. It's probably been moved. But once you start looking into it, and that was one of Dave McGowan's more esoteric discussions about Laurel Canyon and the musicians who lived there and their connection with the intelligence services at the time, the late 60s. Extraordinary story. Recommended. It's now archived on his daughter's website, Center for an Informed America. Get it? Center for an Informed America, CIA. Oh, there's a
I
lot
love your laugh, Mr. Marcus Allen.
Oh, there's a lot of humor in this. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely a great book. And for anyone interested, I do have the entire audiobook on my podcast player. If you follow me on Spotify, just put in on the search bar on the top of my homepage on Spotify, just put in Wagging the Moondoggy or simply David McGowan, and it should pull up the entire audiobook is there. So if anyone is interested. Now, before I let Jera answer this question by Johnny Smith, I did want to address this super quick. This is by Extreme Waken. You can't know definitely that it was fake. My answer to that before I let Jera answer this other question is, you know what? It wasn't us we're not the ones making the claim. NASA was the one making the claim that man landed on the moon in 1969.
Yeah.
The onus is on NASA. The evidence that NASA has given us is flimsier than the lunar lander itself. And that is my stance on it. All right, Jera, go ahead. Johnny Smith says, how did they keep the drinking water liquid on the LEM? The drinking water was in one of the quadrants? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he actually posted this question on the Polar Detectives channel. Yes, he did. I actually left a reply. Maybe he hasn't seen it yet. My answer to that was only the LEM had water tanks. The drinking water in the CSM was supplied as a byproduct of the hydrogen and oxygen fuel cells. Electricity is produced by the chemical reaction of hydrogen and oxygen, which creates water as a byproduct. Water for food preparation, i.e. the rehydratables, was heated, while the drinking water was chilled. The LEM didn't have fuel cells, only batteries, so the LEM had a 400-pound tank in the descent stage and two 40-pound tanks stored in the ascent stage. These were filled at water at 70 degrees Fahrenheit prior to launch. Interestingly, NASA's paperwork states no provisions were made for chilling and heating the portable water on board the LEM, end quote. To maintain that temperature, the tanks themselves were insulated. I hope that answers your question. If anybody's curious, here is the link here's the paperwork I referred to, and I supplied the link. If I see if I can supply that in, we can put it in the chat maybe. Let's try to get that link for you.
Copy that. It looks like Dr. Raza has to part ways. And we'll probably be close to wrapping this up as well because it is late for Mr. Marcus Allen over in the UK. Let's see. If it's 7:45, it means it's 8:45, 9:45, 10:45, 11:45. It's almost 1 o'clock, Mr. Allen.
It is. It's Sunday morning over here in the UK.
Yeah. I worry about you. And that's because I care about you.
In Australia.
In Australia,
I'm sure it's now 9:45 in the morning.
Yeah. Good morning. It's Sunday morning with you, isn't it?
Top of the morning for Mr. Jera. So let me ask you this, Jera. When you have breakfast, do you eat ostrich eggs?
No. I think you mean emu eggs.
Emu eggs.
No, we don't. No. But I do like myself some breakfast burritos. They're really nice.
Oh, hell yeah.
Chicken eggs, of course.
All right. Well, I'm only a little happy now because I am having one of these. It's called the Dad Bod IPA. 9% alcohol volume, and I am feeling rather crispy, if I may say so myself. And Dr. Raza loved that. Dr. Raza, I know you probably had to leave. Do you want to give us any insights? Your Facebook group, I know you started another one. You got infiltrated.
I was just kicked off of Facebook again, so I don't know. Anyway, yeah, just keep watching.
You got kicked off the new one already?
Yeah. Well, no, not. We're sharing an account now, but that. Anyhow, I just wanted to say keep an eye out for the Apollo Detectives channel because me and Robert are working together on this new video, and we've got 5 new smoking guns, it's totally new material, different from the other 12 smoking guns we presented last time. So just keep an eye out for the Apollo Detectives channel.
Hell yeah. And we need to get together for a part 2 on the Cold War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Dr. Raza. All
See
right.
you guys.
Take care.
Yeah. Bye
Yes,
now.
sir.
Bye.
All right.
That's an interesting idea. Remote viewing the moon. I think
remote viewing the moon.
More of that. Must be people who've done it. Ingo Swan, I know, had tried it, and he said, "There's people up there. What's going on?" There were people on Mars as well. Well, animated people, animated creatures.
Well, that one fella there at Zorstigate, he said that there were dinosaurs on Mars and that his crew was eaten by one after they walked through a portal. So, you know, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Extreme Awaken, I want to take a stab at this, if you guys don't mind. So, Extreme Awaken says, other than thinking the moon landing is fake, since some of the videos and photos look fake, why don't you believe it? There is a plethora of reasons not to believe it. First of all, it wouldn't be the first time the government has lied to us. There are many admitted lies. For example, I'll give you a real good example. I am of Native American ancestry. The American government made well over 400 peace treaties with my ancestors. Do you know how many were honored and respected? Absolutely zero. So I do not believe anything this government has to say. And I am a Lincoln assassination researcher. I have covered that in great detail, thanks through the inspiration of the late, great David McGowan. And when you cover that event that took place in 1860, and you realize that nothing what this country was founded upon was honored back in 1860. So these lies go a couple of centuries at the very least. I do not trust anything they say. And so that is another reason why I don't believe the NASA moon landings. Another reason is Operation Paperclip. During Operation Paperclip, the American government, as well as the Russian government, incorporated high-level Nazis into their programs. One of those high-level Nazis was Werner von Braun. High-level Nazi, should have been treated for war crimes as a war criminal. And nevertheless, he went on to head NASA, what later became NASA. This wasn't disclosed until many years later. So those are just a couple of reasons as to why I do not believe that we ever made it to the moon. The other reason would be the technology. When we still, to this day, have a hard time getting man to the moon because of the radiation belts and these other factors, but we did it with no problems and ease in 1969. I do not believe man landed on the moon. So a little bit long-winded answer, but I hope that answers Mr. Extreme Awaken's question.
Good answer, Wheezy. Good answer.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. That means a lot.
I mean, given your historical ancestry and the appalling way in which the original inhabitants of the great land of America were treated over many, many years. I mean, just look at the huge piles of bison carcass that were just eliminated. Fortunately, now there were enough remaining that they could be reintroduced because they're magnificent animals. And they were the basis of the Native American culture. Extraordinary. Why eliminate them if not an attempt at genocide? We're hearing a lot about genocide at the moment. Let's have a look at some of the historical examples of it.
Yeah, I had a podcast with my brother. He's my half brother. We have the same father, different mothers, and I love him as a 100% brother. I don't look at him as my half brother. And his ancestry from his mother's side is 100% Yaqui, indigenous, Indian. And I had him on. I didn't think he would do a podcast with me because he doesn't have any social media presence or anything, and he gladly did the show. It was a great episode. He talked about his culture, what the Yaqui natives were. They never surrendered to the government. And an interesting fact is that the Yaqui, you have an imaginary border separates a tribe, an indigenous tribe. You have the American Yaqui from Arizona, and then you have the Southern Yaqui from Mexico. It's the same people, but a freaking border just got put across and separated peoples, essentially. And I don't know. I guess for me, it hits differently. And I don't trust anything that comes from the government, given the track record. Like I stated, there were hundreds of peace treaties made, and each and every time they were violated and kicked. You know, first, when it started on the East Coast of America, you know, guys, yeah, that's cool. You guys were here, but can you guys move a little bit to the West? A couple decades later, yeah, you know what? That's cool that you guys are here. Can you guys keep moving to the West and just slowly keep pushing everyone out?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons, personally, for me, why I don't believe a damn thing that comes from them. But yeah, I don't want to get political. And just for the record, I am apolitical. I don't believe in the left or the right. But that's here nor there. But yeah, that was just a long-winded answer for why I do not believe in the moon landings of '69.
And just a quick thing, I posted the paper in the private chat. I can't seem to connect to the public chat, so maybe you could share it in the comments.
I'm pulling it up right now. Is it the portable water?
Yeah, about the portable water. Just share that in the chat if anyone wants to have a read.
I got you here. All right.
Yeah. It basically discusses how they had a tank that had to be filled prior to launching the lunar module. They had one in the descent stage and a couple in the ascent stage. And as for the water in the CSM, they basically use that as a byproduct from the fuel cells. As I said, the fuel cells, they take hydrogen and oxygen, put them together, make water, and produce energy from that. So yeah, that's all in the paper if anybody wants to have a read of that.
Nice one.
And where can people find this paper in case they're interested?
I sent the link in the private chat. Maybe just share it in the public chat. We can post it later.
NASA.gov. Yeah, NASA.gov.
It's a bit of a mouthful of a link, so just share it in the chat. I think it'll be easier that way.
Copy that. All right. All right. Well, we are coming up on 3 hours.
Yep.
And it was a great chat.
Just
Mr.
one,
Marcus Allen, by all means.
Just one question for anybody who might challenge what we have to say. Apollo 13 launched on April the 11th, 1970. It was watched by thousands of people, so the launch was real enough. How come the Soviet Navy found an Apollo command module in the Bay of Biscay? The Bay of Biscay is part of the Atlantic Ocean between France and Spain, north of Spain, west of France. They fished it out of the ocean, it'd been floating around, put it on board their ship, took it back to their base port at Murmansk in northern Russia. And 6 months later, the US Coast Guard cutter Southwind arrived at Murmansk, and part of its mission was to recover a piece of hardware that had fallen from space. And the Soviets had decided that they should return it to America. Anybody wants to see it can now see it in Grand Rapids in Michigan, the museum there, where it's referred to as Apollo, but it's sealed. You can't look inside it. Apollo 13 is also the only Apollo mission at which 2 command modules are on display. The other one is at the Kansas Cosmodrome, which you can look inside. How come there are 2 command modules available to view from one mission? It's no conspiracy about this. There are photographs of this command module in the Soviet Union on the USS Coast Guard cutter Southwind being returned to America. And there are also photographs of another Apollo command module. Was it a boilerplate, the one that the Soviets found? It had not been reported as being missing. You'd think something that weighed about 7 tons and quite large, a danger to shipping in the Atlantic, would have been reported as missing. It wasn't. Why not? Did the Soviet Navy find it before the story could be put together to explain its presence in the Atlantic? Quite possibly. It just seems a little unreal that 2 command modules from the same mission can be displayed in the same way. There we go. There's a picture of it. The lost Apollo 13 capsule. It says NASA on it. Well, who's NASA? And why have they lost it? And why haven't they reported it missing? Did it fall off a ship? Oh dear, we've lost our command module in the Atlantic. What's it doing in the Atlantic? They weren't practicing anything in the Atlantic. There are a few stories around which say they were, but it really doesn't make any sense. They were practicing recovering command modules in the Pacific off Hawaii. That's where Apollo 11 was recovered. So what's this story about Apollo 13 and 2 command modules? Now, if anybody can answer that, I'd like to hear it. And don't talk about boilerplate 1227. That may be the answer, but where's the proof? Anybody can say these things. I'm saying things which can be demonstrably correct. So let's hear the answer. NASA supporters, why are the 2 command modules on display, both of which you can go to see? I'd just like to hear the answer. I want to be proved wrong when I say no human has landed on the lunar surface and returned to Earth. I want to be proved wrong. In 30 years of research, hasn't happened yet. No matter how many stupid names you come up with, no matter how many ridiculous ideas you put forward, there we go. We never went to the moon. That started it. Bill Casing's book.
Somebody mentioned it in the chat. I thought I'd show it. He says,
Yep.
I also have Bill Casing book 2, The Truth. Yes, thanks for the shout out, Jack.
Yep. I know some of the things he said in it have been shown to be not 100% accurate, but basically he started a whole discussion. And the film on which, what's it called? The one with,
Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon?
Say again?
The Fox special? Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon? Was that the one you're talking about?
No, it's the Hollywood film with Kojak in it. That's the
Capricorn
one.
one, you mean? Or?
Capricorn 1. It's
And
always
O.J. Simpson.
Capricorn 1.
O.J. Simpson was in there.
It's a great film, that.
I loved it.
Yeah.
And now the new modern version of it was Take Me to the Moon.
Yes. Take Me to the Moon. Was it?
Channing Tatum was
Channing Tatum and
yep.
Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
She was good in that.
That was a great movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed how at the very end, and spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear the end, press pause right now. But at the very end, it seemed like they had to add the part where, well, you know what? We actually did make it to the moon. We just had to fake parts to it because we lost the film and blah blah blah. It's complete rubbish.
There's
It's
a mic on.
nonsense.
Propaganda piece. That's what I reckon. It was a propaganda piece. In fact, when the film came out, the Space.com ran an article basically flogging S.G. Collins's film, claiming that they didn't have any video technology rather in the 60s to fake that. And I left my response that I left a comment basically citing my my Ollis article where I pointed out that yes, they did have the existing high-speed videos to fake this. They had first of all he was talking about the video logic. What do you call it? Sorry, not the Ampex disc recorder, which you would use to play back a normal speed video. He argued that you could only store 30 seconds of footage in that. I said, well, you don't have to keep the entire film stored in that. You could feed 30-second buckets into the recorder and then record the slow-mo playback to a second videotape. Collins actually acknowledged, oh yeah, that's possible. I don't think it happened that way, but yeah, that's a good theory. That's technically possible. But he doubled down on his claim that there was no high-speed video cameras. Ironically, he cited the VideoLogic Instar system, which, and again, I got another reference to that. The VideoLogic Instar system, which was a high-speed camera, the first broadcast quality high-speed video camera, which could record for about an hour. Here's a photo of it. Okay. And it was this is written by a fellow by the name of Chan, who actually worked at the company. And he mentions here television pictures can be black and white or color. So basically, the system that he claimed could only do black and white, no, it could do both color and video. So he got his entire video response was ballsed up. And so I left a comment on Space.com's article, basically flogging this Fly Me to the Moon film and flogging Collins's video. What did they do? They deleted my comment and banned me from commenting.
Yeah. That's standard procedure. Somebody gets too close to the truth has got to be taken out. And they still haven't come to collect my piece of moon rock. Here we are, piece of moon rock, guys. Hello.
Challenge you, Mr. Allen.
Yeah, can you imagine, Marcus? You could get at least 500,000 US for that at auction.
Oh well, let's put it up for sale and see who comes to collect it.
Just going back to the whole Capricorn 1 thing, I have the actual book version of Capricorn 1, and they actually added a whole bunch of additional stuff that wasn't in the film. Like here, I think I mentioned this in the previous show, but they Elliot Gould's character, the reporter, he actually starts to suspect something is up because he actually witnessed you can see in the video footage the truck that came to collect the astronauts and stuff, and he starts basically going to NASA to ask them about that. And in this section here, right, he's waiting for the NASA guys to come to him. Right, he's just asked to wait here. Let's see. Here he's watching the TV of the news coverage. In the CBS booth, Roy Weaver was looking earnestly at the camera and saying, "The spacecraft has now passed through the Van Allen belts, but the dose radiation they received is rather less than that you would get from an X-ray." Caulfield thought, "Bullshit." Of course, being Elliot Gould's character.
Yeah. It's the same story in the James Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever. When James Bond breaks into the laboratory, purporting to examine their radiation patches. I thought was quite a good touch. Radiation is a problem. Most people know that, so maybe you can say it in a film. So James Bond goes rushing around and gets into his lunar rover and crashes out the place in which the astronauts are slow moving through the thing. They can't stop James Bond because he's going very fast. Of course he is. He's James Bond. That's what he does. Moves very fast. So how come we got all these little hints appearing in major Hollywood films about the Apollo moon landings? And that was it Interstellar, where they say, well, we had to change all the textbooks because they never landed on the moon. We had to change them, or something like that.
My favorite Easter eggs are on The Shining. with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. It's loaded with NASA Easter eggs. I mean, from the very beginning, where the groundskeeper looks like John F. Kennedy, and he's got his little flags on the desk. And then later on, when the little boy is in that weird carpet that resembles, crazily enough, it resembles the launch pad at Cape Canaveral, and he's wearing a NASA sweater that says Apollo 11. He's leaning down, and then he stands up, and it simulates a rocket launching from the pad. That is insane. And there's so many of those Easter eggs. Same thing with a room 239. In Stephen King's original book, it was room number 400 and something.
Yeah.
And Kubrick changed it to 239, which is 239,000 miles from Earth to the moon.
Yeah.
So the Easter eggs, I mean, The Shining is laden with Easter eggs. And I definitely want to do a show on that at some point in time. But yeah, it's everywhere. If you just look for it, I suppose.
Yeah. There's been some very good research into those connections by David Percy on his website, owlist.com. He's done a 3-part investigation. Now, don't forget that Stanley Kubrick hated flying. So he only worked in the UK, the Boreham Wood Studios.
Yeah.
He only worked in the UK. So they all came to visit him there. And 2001: A Space Odyssey, probably the greatest science fiction film ever created, was shot in the UK.
Yeah.
Using Douglas Trumbull as the effects director.
I was watching. I actually acquired a subscription to Disney Plus recently. I wanted to catch up on the new Star Wars films and also the Cars films that came out. They had done a TV show. They actually did an episode where they spoofed The Shining. They had the whole elevator with the blood. They used antifreeze, of course, but I was waiting for them to do the little boy with the Apollo 11 rocket shot, but nothing came about.
Yeah.
But yeah. Speaking of James Bond, I actually posted something in the private chat if you want to share it.
Right.
Let's see.
Oh, there's one question. There's one question, Wheezy.
Yeah.
Not a space agency is asking, is the surface of the moon electrostatic? Could a spacecraft get zapped due to stored electric radiation particles that would strike the surface of the moon, which might create dangerous winds? How about that one, Jer?
Oh yeah, the whole when the moon gets full in particular, right? The surface gets entirely electrostatic, and it causes the dust to levitate. You can actually enlarge the picture there.
Yeah, what the hell, man? April O'Neil as a turtle with a busty set is what's.
That's not what I was talking about. I'm talking about the picture there, mate. That's fan art. That actually happened in the comics. That actually happened in the comics there. Yeah, just enlarge the picture of me.
Do I click on it? I'm scared now, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, we're talking about James Bond. Yeah, I was at a dinner party with George Lazenby a few years ago.
All right.
Could I share that?
Oh, what a lovely lady.
Yeah, I
that's
agree,
Rachel Grant. That's Rachel Grant. She played Peaceful Fountains of Desire in Die Another Day, the Masseur, the one who had the gun on her leg.
Yep.
But but back to the subject. Yes, regarding the electrostatic stuff. When the moon gets electrostatically charged, what happens is the dust starts to levitate off the ground. And there's actually pictures from the Surveyor spacecraft showing the dust floating like that. And it makes you wonder about. They say, well, we found LRO pictures of the footprints. Well, how could the footprints still be there after all this time? All the dust constantly levitating off the ground and falling back again. You'd think it would have been erased by that stage.
Yeah. Standard
Marcus
stuff,
007.
Yeah. Their story is unraveling one episode at a time.
That's it.
Yeah.
This is episode number 9.
Oh, sorry, Wheezy. No, I was just going to answer Marcus there, reply to Marcus with our friend there, Mr. Dave. Digital Dave. Well, we're going to have a very good video coming out this week on Mr. Dave. We've got to, well, Marcus, do you want to take it from there? You want to tell them what we've done?
Well,
you've answered all his questions.
Yeah, it's interesting. Digital Dave, David McKeegan, and Rusty, his dog, who features in his films. And he was having a go at the photographs on the moon could not have been faked. That was his thesis. And he made various comments about it, but he didn't mention anything to do with vacuum, I noticed. He just sort of said, well, of course, they changed the lubrication in the Hasselblad camera, which is the only reference to vacuum that I could see. But he didn't tell us what they replaced the lubricants with, assuming they did. And if they didn't replace the lubricants, how come the camera worked so brilliantly to take these 5,771 images on the lunar surface? Using, probably, I would agree with his assessment that the Hasselblad camera is probably the best camera you could have used. Best camera then, the best camera now. But it was primarily the lenses on the camera that were so good. The Zeiss lenses. Zeiss still makes brilliant lens equipment like microscopes, telescopes, such like today. So they know how to make lenses. That's never been in question. But were they used on the lunar surface with photographic film? This stuff. If you haven't used photographic film, and that's why we call him Digital Dave, because he's only used digital cameras, he hasn't looked at the fact that the images were taken on Kodak Ektachrome transparency material, because that's the best material at the time. Ektachrome and Kodachrome were very good films. But would they have worked on the lunar surface? I don't think so. Especially with a camera that had no viewfinder. None at all. You had to aim the camera by moving your body because it was mounted on your chest.
Yeah, in Apollo 17, we see him with the camera. It's not on his chest. He's just using the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see him, and he has the ring that's welded up at the top, and that's what they use for a viewfinder, if you want to call it that, because they can't see the film counter. They can't see the side of the camera. They can only see the top of it. So they put a little ring on there, so they used that for the viewfinder. Well, I tried doing that with my iPad. I just put my wedding ring up on the top. And I tried looking through that as a viewfinder, and my goodness, it was not easy.
No.
So I don't know how these guys did it. I could hardly take a photo of, get it centered, and especially bracketing it. If you want to take multiple images looking through a wedding ring, because that's the size of that ring they have on the camera. All I can say is anyone who wishes to try that, I wish them luck.
Yeah. Maybe you'll get one or two good pictures. I mean, it's perfectly possible if you take enough photographs of the same scene to get one that possibly is in focus, correctly exposed, pointed in the right direction.
But through a ring? But through a ring at the top of the camera, using that for a viewfinder, it's not even calibrated, for crying out loud.
Of course it's not. And that's why all cameras have viewfinders, so you can see what you're looking at. Well, if you're using a film camera, and I've used the Hasselblad camera, I've used the Rolleiflex, the Mamiya Flex, I've used the Canon, the Nikon cameras, the Pentax cameras, 35mm cameras. I know what I'm talking about with cameras.
Yes, yes. And it's the same with this levitating dust. Can you imagine that sticking all over the camera? It would be like a magnet.
Yeah, I thought I'd share this picture now. See, what happens is you see when the moon enters the magnetic field tail, you see, of the Earth, and also the plasma, it basically gets it's electrostatically charged, and it also some interactions with the solar wind can do that too. You see, particularly the plasma though. What happens is it causes the dust to start levitating off the surface. And if you can enlarge the picture a little bit so we can see it more clearly. Try to zoom in on the actual picture itself, so we can see the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, press it. Yeah, there we go. Yes. So basically, this was taken by the Surveyor spacecraft, and you can see what it sees is those little clouds you see at the top there. That's actual dust. It levitates off the ground and becomes sunlit. Okay, this was presumably taken during a night pass. Okay, it levitates off the ground and it becomes sunlit. Okay, and so then it actually, once the charge goes away, it falls back down to the ground. Okay, and so the point I was trying to make here is that, considering what happens when this dust becomes electrostatically charged, you would think after all those years the boot print trails would probably get erased after all those times. It makes you wonder. Which further calls into question the LRO pictures.
Yes, well, that's interesting, Jared, because we've had a lot of videos done on this, and we actually show a diagram of this happening, and we also show this dust levitating right above the moon. You can see it. And I don't know what that was taken with, but anyway, it's there. It's in the light. There's a huge cloud of dust there above the moon when the sunlight struck it. So okay. I don't know how those boot prints could still be there.
Just to clarify here, the Surveyor spacecraft, I'm not sure which spacecraft you're talking about, Robert, but the Surveyor used a TV camera, a slow scan TV camera, and that's the pictures that we see there in these levitation images.
Right.
Yeah.
Just another thing too, if you see me rubbing up my eyes, the light's hurting my eyes, and I tend to rub myself then. So.
Don't worry, it'll pass. Yeah, so just so that nobody is confused, the Apollo Surveyor program, I think there were 5 of them altogether.
Which 7, but 2 of them crashed.
Yeah, 2 of them crashed. There were 7 launches to determine what the surface was like, so they knew they wouldn't sink in. Those were real. Those happened, as did the lunar orbiter. So it's perfectly possible to reach the lunar surface. That's not in dispute, but with unmanned craft, with robot craft. Us delicate little creatures, completely different story. We are affected by radiation. We're affected by vacuum. We're affected by pressure or lack of it. That is what we question. Whether humans could have landed on the lunar surface, walked across it, returned to Earth, looking quite happy, quite normal, chatting around. There we go. Yep, that's the one. When now people returning from space have to be lifted out of their spacecraft, put onto stretchers because they can't walk. All right, they spent a bit longer in space than they have going to the moon and back. That took about 2 weeks. But how do we know that they were as fit, healthy, and as humorous as they appeared to be? It makes no sense. So when you start adding all these things together, asking the questions, not getting the answers, you have to conclude that we have been misled at best, lied to at worst, for political reasons. It was a Cold War. It was necessary for America to demonstrate to the world, live on television, don't forget, live on television, that they had done what they said they were going to do. They were better than the Soviet Union. It was a political event. It was dressed up as a scientific event. But if you look at the effect on the Saturn V rocket, which was used to launch Skylab in 1973, it overheated to the extent that it would have been impossible for humans to operate inside it, which is the purpose of it. It was the S4B section was used as a laboratory, and they had to put a sunscreen over it because the temperature of a spacecraft in space heated by the radiant energy of the sun, which you can calculate using the Stefan Boltzmann constant on black body radiation, is 246 degrees Fahrenheit, 120 degrees centigrade. That's hot enough to cook your chicken at. It's far too hot for humans to operate at. So how come they were able to do so quite unaffected by heat on the moon? Makes no sense. Scientifically, it doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So if you want to believe that you've seen humans on the moon, I've seen gorillas climb the Empire State Building. Is that real? No, of course it's not. It's Hollywood at its finest. I've seen dinosaurs chasing kids around kitchens in Jurassic Park. Is that real? No, of course it's not. It's Hollywood at its finest. It's special effects. I've seen men walk on the moon. Is that real? No, it's not. Hollywood couldn't do it. Well, maybe one should say Hollywood did it, but it wasn't Hollywood as we understand it. It was a special community set up within NASA to create the belief that we've landed on the moon. Was it real? No, of course it wasn't. But it was a very good propaganda exercise to persuade the world that America had done it. But they can't do it now. 60 years later, they can't repeat it.
Exactly. I've seen Robert Williams make a little clip of astronauts with the flag waving. We played that at the very beginning with the intro video, and a rover kicking up mud. It looks pretty damn real, but it's
You
not.
have the one. You have the one of the golf ball, Robert. You want to play that one?
Of the which one?
The golf game.
Oh yeah, let's have a look at some of these here. I put them in a folder just for some fun here.
Let's play it. So
Yeah.
everyone,
While
this
he's getting
is
it,
Robert Williams. Yeah, this is Robert Williams having some fun with his photo editor in 2025. Look how realistic these videos are, and they're not real. So I don't know. This is the way I look at it. If we're ever told, hey, look, these are real images, I don't know, man. You got to question everything. That's just my stance on it. I know maybe, Jara, you may not agree with it, but this is where we're at. It's wild. It's hard to distinguish what's real and what's fiction. That's all I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah. It
I
certainly
just
is.
wanted to, while he's getting that, I noticed Not a Space Agency has asked how much is Ralph Renee's book, NASA Moon America. You can get that on ralphrene.com for $49.
Yep.
Okay, and,
Good book, that.
You also have
There's some extra bits in it as well.
And
I
I
sent
want
you a copy of it recently, Marcus.
I want to throw in a plug for Marcus Allen's book, The Apollo Moon Hoax. I had some books that I had to read, including Randy Walsh's amazing book.
Yeah.
So I had to read a few then before I got to Mr. Marcus Allen's book right there, as Jared's holding up, The Apollo Moon Hoax.
Yeah, go on to Amazon. Just put my name in it. You'll find it.
Yeah, I'm 30 or 40 pages in, and it is breezing by. I can't put it down. And I'm loving it. I'm loving every second. So anyone listening, definitely go to Amazon, look for Marcus Allen, The Apollo Moon Hoax book. I'm endorsing it. It is an amazing book. It's an easy read. It's not complicated, and you lay it out great. You have some amazing quotes, and I am privileged to have an autographed copy.
There we go.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
We really do.
Yeah. Jared's got an autographed copy too. Yeah.
And you have one of mine, I believe. I left a little inscription in the book I sent you, Marcus.
I know. Yeah, NASA Moon America. Up to date. Dear old.
Yeah, he
dear old-
published a few. Yeah, I was just going to say he published a few additional appendixes before he died, and I've kept the book in print since. It includes a new essay as well, which new posthumously published essay that he had wrote about about cosmic rays. And that's all in the later edition. If you are going to get the book, get it from ralphrene.com. The copy that's been floating around on Amazon is an illegal, outdated edition that somebody uploaded to Amazon KDP or Create Space or whatever it's called. Hey, Jeff Bezos, if you're watching, right, you've infringed my copyright there.
Look at this. Okay. Look at this.
Oh, the moving Luna.
Can you replay it? Look at this. Now, okay, let's pause this real quick. So, if you saw this video, this is what I want people to. You have to question everything. If CNN or Fox News, whatever mainstream rag you choose it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If they showed it to you and said, "This is fact. This is direct feed from NASA. These are our astronauts." The vast majority of people, unfortunately, would say, "Yeah, wow, that's crazy. That's real."
Yeah.
There's another one for you.
It looks pretty damn good. It looks pretty damn good, Bob.
There's one for you there too. Jump salute.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the same one.
Robin and I were talking about this last night. I remember back in the early 2000s when Bart Sabrillo had received that footage and he started doing radio interviews and the like. I remember, I think it was on Banal of America audio, or it might have been Coast to Coast. I can't remember which one it was. But he was asked at one stage, "You're a filmmaker, Bart. Is this footage something that you could have faked?" And his response would be, "I couldn't have faked, all Armstrong's 1969 voice. I couldn't fake his appearance. Well, now we can." And here's his picture. Robert here has taken a picture from, this is one of my Trojan Smirch promotional pictures. He's basically animated Tanner and Tessa the Tigress. Look at that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's all from one still picture. It's insane. Do you have the one of Tanner firing the guns? The first one.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We'll give you that one there.
Yeah.
The AI kind of butchered his helmet, but it's astonishing to see the image brought to life with the AI. And so, it's very, very scary as to what can be considered real, what can be considered fake now and stuff. Because if tomorrow Buzz Aldrin passed away and he posthumously published an interview of him, or a video of himself rather, that looked like a slice to me, Al.
Look at this. An astronaut hitting a hole in one.
What we had to say about this went just as far as the one on Apollo 15, didn't it?
Yeah.
14, 15? 15.
Hey, good bunker shot.
But see, this is what I want people to look at. If you're watching the video right now, maybe you're listening on audio later on in the week, go to timestamp 3 hours, 28 minutes, and look at the lunar surface. Look how realistic that looks.
Yeah, that's the single picture. Yeah, that's Alan Shepard with his cart. That's the one single picture.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's if nowadays, if somebody asked Bart the same question, is this something you could have faked? Well, obviously he couldn't answer. I could not fake Armstrong's voice. I could not fake Armstrong's image of 1969. Well, now you can, it seems. It's crazy. If tomorrow, as I was saying, if Aldrin passed and posthumously published a confession video, people could turn around and say, "Oh, that's a fake AI video. Somebody hacked into his Twitter account and published that. She's being a bit of a troll." It's crazy.
See, there's Buzz Aldrin with the solar experiment and those two lights up there. Two flares up there.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah,
look at the lunar lander with its glorious gold foil.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is insane.
Sound on the moon, guys.
Well, of course. No, we have one last one.
Okay.
That's lovely. Well done, Robert.
So the question then becomes, this is available to us as the lay public in 2025. You have to imagine that intelligence agencies, the military, had access to this many decades before. This is what I added on the intro.
Oh, rain on the moon. Great stuff.
Rain and wind. Rain and wind. Look at this. Look how real that looks, though.
Yeah. Must be a Tesla, that car. It's got no driver.
Yeah.
Oh, Musk has got there eventually.
Oh yeah, here, and then you guys will recognize this one here too coming up.
Is that Dr. Raza inside the spacesuit?
No.
It looks like Dr. Raza.
Yeah. Maybe. Oh, yeah, that's right too. I think I took. Yes, I merged. You're right. I merged Raz's face in the spacesuit. Yes.
Holy shit!
Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. No. I'm looking at the wrong picture. Oh yeah, this one here. Yeah, that's Raza.
Dr. Raza in the spacesuit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's awesome, but scary at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, this is available to the lay public in 2025. You have to imagine this was available decades ago. So, what else has been faked?
And then
Thought
you have this one
experiments.
here too. That this is Marcus's favorite one here. This is the jump salute.
Oh, let's have a look. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now, Gerald probably know the answer to this. if this were real, how much higher would he be jumping?
Yeah.
There were tests that were done at the Langley Research Center where they would suspend the astronauts sideways on the wires to simulate the lunar gravity. They found even with the heavy backpacks, they could jump something like about a couple meters into the air. I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but you can look up the video I put out back in the day. It's called Moonfaker Leaping Lunatics.
Yeah.
So that's what I guess that was my point was, theoretically speaking, if man landed on the moon, they'd be jumping like they would make Michael Jordan look like nothing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. And
be
this guy,
fine.
yeah, and this guy really gets out of the way here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that is amazing, isn't it? How the rover just literally grows. The LEM grows wheels, and the rover drives it away.
It's a transformer.
Yeah, it's a there's your first transformer. Yeah, there's your second generation transformer. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. The astronaut's dumbfounded. I wouldn't. If I was him, I would be too.
Yeah. Well, you've got a few fans. Here's Jack. I am really enjoying the new moon videos.
Yeah, they're great films. Well done, Robert.
Yeah. Good job, Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you sent me those yesterday, I was like, man, I need to incorporate that into our new intro. And as a matter of fact, maybe when we close out, we'll play the intro again, since it was a great little piece.
It looks so real. It must be fake.
Yeah, it looks so
see
real.
not
It
a-
must be fake.
I see not a space agency has asked, Gerard, why don't you make your book into an AI movie? Honestly, I would probably sooner sell the film rights to Netflix or something, try to make it into a motion. I'd love to see Sid Tanner become a film series or a TV series, because it, as a certain relative of mine always says, it lends yourself to film. That's what it does. That's what the book that's coming up. It should. I'm currently overseeing the final proofreading phase, and so it should be out by next month. Took a bit longer than expected to get the editing and everything done, but we're overseeing the final editing phase of Trojan Smirch, and you should see it on shelves soon enough.
Awesome. And then Mr. Marcus Allen, you can get his book at Amazon. And I also put the all list links, anyone that's interested in finding Jared's work, as well as many other people's works on the moon hoax. You can find it at Aulis, AULIS.com. Also, make sure you sub to the Apollo Detectives on YouTube. Also, follow the Apollo Detectives on Rumble. We're trying to build their Rumble channel up in case anything were to happen on YouTube. And
yeah, well, YouTube is really suppressing us right now. They're only putting out about an average right now of about 400 impressions. We used to get 1 million. We used to get 3 million. And that was when we used to get, 256,000 views. Now we only get maybe 300 impressions, maximum 5,000, and that's it. So 5,000 times per video average is what they're putting out. So, and nobody's getting notified. Most people are not getting notified. And I see a lot of that in the comments too, under the video.
YouTube,
so, yeah. And Jared,
YouTube stopped sending emails as well. It's crazy what's happening. There's it suppresses my videos from being found in search engines and whatnot. And now it's not even sending me any email notifications. I receive the pop-ups, but I don't receive any email notifications of people who've left comments on my videos.
No,
it's
Rumble,
crazy what's happening.
Yeah, Rumble is
no, not Rumble. It's about YouTube.
Yeah, Rumble's chopped us too, and TikTok's chopped us, and Twitch has removed our channel.
Whoa!
YouTube has removed our lunar landing discussions channel. They took it down last month. So yeah.
And I think I can attribute that to you're right over the target. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, when you're over the target, that's when things start happening.
Yeah, you can't have that. So yeah, I mean, great stuff, guys. We'll definitely have to get together to do a part 10. This is edition number 9. Anyone, if you guys are new and you guys enjoy this conversation, go back through the back catalog. This is our 9th show together. It's been awesome. I mean, this is a regular thing pretty much. I always enjoy having you on, Jara, Mr. Marcus Allen, Robert. We didn't have Scott today. Shout out to Scott if he's listening. He's also a great member of the Apollo Detectives. Dr. Raza joins us from time to time. This is a community, and I enjoy it. And so even though times we may disagree, like Jara and I disagreed earlier, there's no hard feelings. We just agree to disagree. And I find it beautiful. And I think Jared does as well. Maybe I'm speaking for him, but it's awesome. I think people learn when people have these cordial discussions, disagreements. There was no ad hominem attacks being thrown, nothing dirty. We just simply view things differently. And I think people learn from that at the end of the day. And if anyone's interested in my content as well, I normally don't post on YouTube. Today we did it on YouTube, but I normally don't do things here. Follow me on these other platforms. Just search What is Truth Podcast. Tomorrow I will be covering Alex Jones and the Sandy Hook trial. I have a feeling that's going to be a massive episode. We've done a few massive episodes lately. People have really enjoyed that. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely follow me there. The Apollo Detectives, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Marcus. The Marcus Allen. Thank you, Jared White. You guys are awesome. Always a treat.
Yeah, it was fun. Always have a good time.
Absolutely. So I hope everyone enjoys this outro. This was an outro, and we incorporated one of those NASA clips by Robert. Everyone, hugs and kisses. And Mr. Marcus, go memes. It is late for you. So
it
is.
It's 20 to 2 at the moment, which is nice.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Nice and quiet in the UK.
That's why I'm cutting it short. I feel we could definitely go longer. But I'm going to be emailing you, Mr. Allen, as I finish your book, and we need to have another date for another show.
Look forward to that. Thanks. Appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you as a friend. Absolutely. Good. All righty, folks. Have a good one. We'll catch you on the next one.